That one is a little confusing if you weren't watching last week at any point. Mifflin made a bet with chat. A $5 bet that a certain team, I think it was the Titans, would win game number 2 versus the Kings. Didn't quite work out there, and didn't really work out there for Mifflin either. And as such, we thought the easiest way to give $5 to you was not straight out of Mifflin's bank account, because trust me, he doesn't have that much, I'm going to guess. And he is instead offering you $5 off merch at shop.smiteproleague.com. Use code Mifflin, all caps, while you're there. And you know, while you're at it, I think until next Tuesday, sometime next week, what is it? It's the 15th, 22nd is about Monday. A week away. Whatever today is, a week from today, you should go ahead and get that Pride shirt because it's only on sale for another week, so make sure you do that. Gormizer, Mifflin, we were just over there. Now we're over here doing this thing, and it's these two teams, Clay Soldiers, JustF6, that are going to be going forward. Elimination games for the SCC. The name of this that I just completely... Relegations, there we go. Blanked on that one of all things. And this is a do or die. Clay Soldiers, we just saw, not able to find their win against Team Joystick. JustF6, kind of in the same boat, but against a couple of other teams. I believe, actually, yes, also losing to Joystick earlier this week on the offline game. So they need this win. They beat Thunderhead. All they have to do is take down Clay Soldiers.
Yeah, whichever team wins this set does move on and maintain their SCC status. Loser gets knocked down to the SOC level. And in the past, when these two teams have gone head-to-head, Gore, it's been one set win for each. A complete toss-up, 50-50 odds here. I'm excited.
Way back when, I think this is April, it's a 2-0 for Clay Soldiers. Last time they play, it's a 2-1 for JustF6. So keeping things pretty close, and the more recent one is the one that matters the most, right? So JustF6 technically, in my mind, have the more important win as of late. And that's where things get a little interesting. I mean, like you just highlighted, we just watched Clay Soldiers, and Saraga didn't really get involved early on. We had almost nothing out of that Loki in game number 2. Farrakrick had a lot of good damage, but not a lot of moments. Again, in game number 2, they didn't get to show off as much.
Yeah, I need Shoxy Foxy to clean up the early game, and I need Saragazek to be present for the early game if you want to be favoring Clay Soldiers in this one. But in the past, they have had decent matchups up against this JustF6 draft, and even in that 45-minute banger we saw in game 1 of the last set, they were very much still in that one. One team fight is all it would have taken for them to take down that last squad. Don't count them out just yet.
It'll be interesting to see, sorry, I had to swallow there, how they're going to be able to take on JustF6, right? I mean, that is not exactly the performance that you want if you're Clay Soldiers moving forward. But you've got a pretty good squad here on this JustF6 squad, and not even to the point where I would say that they have improved vastly from the first week we saw them. Granted, they only ever had one win in the SCC. It was against Clay Soldiers that last time. It's the only time they were able to pull something in their way. I think they were 1-9 otherwise. Not a lot of dubs for this squad, yet they improved every single week. Worst Turtles is maybe the biggest one to look at because he was the replacement, right? The first 6 weeks or so, they didn't have this guy as their jungler. Lestimics was able to come in, looked really good. Same thing for Rotwin, Toddy, and Sodos. And so this squad slowly came into its own boots.
Yeah, I think that this team has got a lot of the same issues that we've seen from Clay Soldiers in the past, in that they are incredibly conflict adverse in the early game. If they fall behind, they're very willing to give up a lot of farm. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in its own right, but if you give up 2, 3, 4 red buffs, it's like, what are you waiting on? You need to put up a defense somewhere. JustF6, a team that I think has made great strides in recent weeks, especially around their mid laner. Sodos has had a limited god pool in the past. You'll see a lot of ESET from him occasionally. You'll see him bring out things like the Morrigan, but now has started to incorporate a little bit more. You won't be overly surprised if he locks in the Yanis, occasionally goes towards the Ra, and I think with that has opened up a lot of these team compositions for his team.
I will admit, I'm worried for this JustF6 squad because I just looked up the fact that they have 3 total game wins throughout this entire phase that we saw. A lot of the wins that we saw, 2 of them were up against the Clay Soldiers to get a set. One of them was up against Pandemonium way back in week number 1 for that. So a lot of pressure, I think, on JustF6 to perform here. We'll see if they're going to be able to do it as we move into picks and bans for game number 1. But Mifflin, the good news is 3 wins throughout an entire phase. You only need 2 to make it back in there. Granted, I think they're hoping for a little bit more along the way if they do make it back into the SCC for Phase 2.
Gore, you could put a positive spin on anything. Yeah, they've already got 3 in the past. What's 2 more? Just about doubling their win count if they want to maintain that SCC status. But so far, we can reroute ourselves in what's happening on the screen. P's and B's starting to round their way out. Osiris and Athena removed from the table by Clay Soldiers. And JustF6, I'm going to take a play from your book here, Gore. Lift the laptop. Sobek and Gilgamesh banned out.
That's the tech, dude. You go ahead and grab that one. Osiris, Athena, and that Yemoja taken away as you had highlighted from Clay Soldiers. And this Athena is someone that we had kind of highlighted. She's disappeared from the meta last week in the SBL, wasn't really looked at that often. Osiris is the one that catches me off guard. I mean, in Europe, we've seen specifically Deathwalker had been picking it up, but nobody else was really prioritizing him. He is your first ban here, and they lock in this Soul first.
Yeah, I think Clay Soldiers actually played it inside of that last set exactly one time, and then they banned it out themselves. Soul and Merlin locked in. JustF6, I think, have a decent idea of what the Clay Soldiers are looking for. They've loved this Soul pick in the past, Clay Soldiers that is, but generally they like to match it up with things like the Fafnir, and when you open up that door, you can go for these double Hunter-esque compositions. Clay Soldiers do forego that inside of the last set, but certainly still an option now that Fafnir has been locked in as well. But maybe the best Hunter option for Clay Soldiers has already been taken off the table. JustF6 find themselves a Chiron.
And you have to feel improvements coming in from Clay Soldiers. This Fafnir was there in game number 1 of the first set, and that's the one that goes 40-plus minutes in because Shoxy Foxy, granted, while not maybe a clean early game, still was getting something done. They add in the King Arthur, and you had highlighted the Soul. Feels like it's all going to synergize pretty well. Cullen locked in on the other side alongside the Chiron and the Merlin. And JustF6 do have a very powerful 3. They're looking for a good jungle and a good front line to try and finish this one out.
Yeah, plenty of objective burn already from this JustF6 draft. They don't really need to draft too much more damage as far as objectives are concerned. Chiron and Merlin should be able to do it all on their own. Meanwhile, though, the Clay Soldiers have got themselves a very good front line. Inside the last set where we saw from Clay Soldiers, the main concern was all the drafts they're going for, high execution, lacking on front line, things along those lines. But now here in this second set, Fafnir and King Arthur going to round out their engage. Incredibly strong. They've got good damage output already from this Soul. I think they could slot in just about anything in these last 2 slots and come away with a very usable team composition.
Well, they grabbed the Anher, who was reigning supreme throughout a majority of Phase 1 of the SBL, at least, the first 4 or 5 weeks. And this Achilles that we saw work out pretty well for them in Game 1 as well. Again, Saraga able to find some executes. Maybe not as hands-on as you would have liked for a jungle, but definitely something that he's going to be able to bring. And interesting enough, he's going to be able to take that against the Kukulkan, against the Terra, against the Camazotz. That execute might actually be necessary with all the sustain that's now available on the other side.
Yeah, this Camazotz, I think, is going to throw a wrench in the works here for Clay Soldiers. There's not a lot of peel potential on this Clay Soldiers draft, so a god that is so adept at diving like Camazotz is going to have decent targets on her if he's ever isolated. Camazotz hops on that, bat out of hell to immune the entirety of Desert Fury, and the same thing can be said of Soul and her Supernova. It's going to be up to the Clay Soldiers on winning the initial engagement. If Fafnir is the first one in, you think it's going to be a hammer start immediately into a Sunder. You've got plenty of damage on the side of Clay Soldiers to finish off the kill from there, but I think they're probably going to have to if these team fights go late.
It's a lot of pressure, I think, onto Saraga once again. That's where I'm going to put the pressure. Him and Shoxy had some rough Game 1 and Game 2 of the last set. We'll see if we can pull that back in set number 2 and earn themselves back their spot in the SCC Relegations, or if JustF6 will take it. We'll go down to Dave and Taco for the cast.
Thank you, Gore. Thank you, Mifflin. It's time for one of these 2 teams to punch the first hole in their ticket on their way right back into the SCC. My name is Dolson. Taco's with me. Doug, of course, working the cameras for us here for our second matchup of the day. And Taco, we already saw Clay Soldiers there in matchup number 1, and frankly didn't look great for him in the second matchup there. So now you got to get your feet back under you. They're going to stick with the Soul here. Give something a bit different over to Atori, though. They got the Anher. A bit of a traditional hunter from what we saw earlier on here in Season 8. Anher versus Chiron should be an interesting lane.
A little bit more of an aggressive matchup, at least for Itori, that he can perhaps try to play more into alongside of that Fafnir. Have to remember, one thing that got the better end of Clay Soldiers in their first set today, Dolson, was just the fact that they were never really able to establish clear map pressure on either of these side lanes, and you typically want that avenue just to give your jungler something to work with.
Do you think Achilles is good at capitalizing on some of that lane pressure should it arrive? And we know what a Camazotz can do. Admittedly, Achilles, not the most popular jungle pick we've seen here as of late. Well, what does that look like for Saraga?
Achilles is definitely someone who can get in and get out. That's for certain, Dulcin. I think the main emphasis here for Serizek is he just needs to try and use some of that warrior damage early on.
Sure.
Just to get like clear poke out, because you don't necessarily have to find a kill to make an advantage. You just need to be able to suppress farm, control the map farm more importantly, that is available globally speaking. You have to remember Oracle's not as tanky as they will be once that new no boots patch comes through. On the 8.6 bonus patch, they are still relatively easy to take, and sure enough, Achilles, Farcrick, they're not going to waste any time just trying to take whatever is available.
Watch out, a solo kill potential and a solo kill confirmed over on the right-hand side of the map. This one, about as cut and dry as it gets. Listimics just does enough damage, gets the minion wave in on the assist, picks up the first kill of the matchup here. Rotwin stunned down, but won't take any more damage than necessary there. So JustF6 already on the board first, and it's Listimics with the solo kill over the King Arthur.
Tough one for Azrael. Just might not have been as mindful as he needed to be against that creep wave damage, just expending too much, looking for the clear through that Kakolan brute force, and Toddy could be in some trouble. Instead, it's going to be Tori that'll jump out of that Terra wall stun, and still a little bit awkward here in the dual lane, but more importantly, it's just going to be even more difficult for the Achilles to make something happen, given the fact that King Arthur has already largely lost pressure in solo.
God, this lane is just, it looks chaotic. Everyone's throwing out all their stuff at once. You got to dodge a hammer, you got to dodge a pillar. There's Terra walls on one side. Chiron's throwing up damage. I mean, just all at once, it feels like all of this CC and damage is just being thrown out at either side. And luckily for both sides, they're all somewhat even as far as health goes. Sustain still looking okay as far as potions and things like that. Merlin and the Kamizatas stayed alive under the pressure of Soul and Achilles early on here in this game. Seems like a matter of time until Soul gets to the point where that damage is just going to be absolutely pouring out. We already saw that in our first set of the day. Merlin, though, Taco, I mean, still absolutely has that potential. You get some of those items online, positioning yourself well enough. You could see Merlin at the top of the damage charts as well.
Merlin possibly maybe even getting a slight edge over the Soul here, just because he does have a little bit more AoE presence, especially when you think about him in terms of those objective secures, objective shred. That's also going to be relatively important when dealing with Fafnir. Sotos, though, might have found himself in a spot of trouble, will flicker away into safety, but that's some of that early game pressure that we were asking for out of the Achilles.
Yeah, Serga just kind of walks into that lane. Sotos has to flicker away, use up some of those pots. Still some skirmishing over in the dual lane, though. It's going to be a double root from Rotwin, and then a dash on out for a little extra damage onto SCC. The fact that we've seen no kills here just yet, I think kind of crazy. There has been some sustain over on the JustF6 side. And there was an upgraded Sunder plus Hammer tossed out just now from SCC. So much pressure on either side. But neither jungler has made their way over to the left just yet to try to capitalize.
It's largely just because of the fact that Terra, Chiron, that's relatively safe clear. It's largely just a stalemate here. Itori not really able to utilize some of that on her pressure to try and create an advantage just yet in that solo, or excuse me, the duo lane. It is a little bit difficult, though. You have to imagine that when you're dealing with the likes of a Terra, you have to always factor in her passive. She won't necessarily be knocked back every single time that impale is available. We've already seen a couple of instances fall short there for Itori. It's largely going to come down to, I think, the timing for whether or not we can see SCC maybe create an opportunity with some of those Fafnir hammer stuns.
That's a quick pause on our end. Appreciate everyone sticking by before we jump back into game number one. And so it's been a kind of a standard EU, I think, paced game in the first few minutes here. I think the fact that King Arthur's kind of kept his feet under after that early solo kill is a great sign. Tainted Steel was the starter item picked up there for the Kulkullen. Is there snowball potential out of that lane, or is that just buying you a little extra pressure with the solo kill there? King Arthur's still going to get to the point where it's kind of too difficult to find those early picks.
I think it more so depends on whether or not the Kakolan's actually able to create an opportunity. What I mean by that is whether or not he's going to actually be able to rotate from the soul line to the mid lane and actually utilize some of that early game pressure that he was already able to establish, because he does have clear advantage currently, but probably still has to be fairly mindful of not looking for the proxy too early on, because you have to remember, we haven't seen those junglers make any sort of rotations towards duo. You know that jungle is going to be largely hovering around that mid mid-jungle sector, and whenever there's a jungler present, you can never really risk having your lead blown by just overextending for proxy.
Yeah, we've seen the Achilles work over to the mid lane as we jump on back in to game number 1. Appreciate the patience, everybody. We haven't seen much from Worst Turtle here just yet. Has fallen 1 level behind what Saraga has brought to the table here so far. Surprising at all? I mean, is Camazot's at the point now where, you know, you're getting to 5 minutes in, you've reached your point in your ultimate. Now is probably the time, right, where you hope to see some pressure.
Camazotz will likely struggle, though, up against the Achilles, and that's just, again, where we get to the discussion of warrior pressure as opposed to that of Camazotz, where Worst Turtle obviously probably going to be building a little bit more glass cannon based, has a slight experience trailing to that of Saragazek, but it's nothing that is put this Camazotz out of commission by any means. It's largely just the fact that Worst Turtle just has to be a little bit more thoughtful about his initiation, because have to remember Achilles having that execute range threshold. Just because you click for Bat Out of Hell doesn't mean you've left the playing field just yet to be out of zone for the execute.
Right, you got to be inch perfect with the timing on that ultimate. I'd wonder when we see some of this. Saraga getting aggressive over on the purple buff. Atori has taken so much damage here, but the final snipe from Toddy is not going to be there, and Atori will survive on the back end. Rotwin being chased down by Saraga. Can he get within execute threshold? Yes, he can, and Rotwin rooted in place, and Saraga picks up the kill, but Worst Turtle hunting for more.
JustF6, the worst time ever for that Fafnir transformation to take place, or de-transformation, I should say. So a nice punish on the back end there for JustF6. They will be able to swap support for support, so no clear leverage just yet, but Saragazek, he's going to blink in, he's going to find Toddy, and he's going to clean that Chiron up. No problem at all. Achilles just has the damage to boot.
Yeah, and that is brutal now with 2 kills over on the Clay Soldiers jungler. We saw what a dead even Achilles was able to do to Sotos earlier on, where kind of one flurry of abilities forced the Merlin to flicker away and then go back to base just a few moments later. Now there's a couple kills in that back pocket. Ninja Tabby picked on up there for the Achilles, but still looking ability-based, depending on where that first item goes here. So now Saraga, you feel like kind of playing with some house money. 6 minutes, 45 seconds in, you got a couple of extra kills, still even on XP with Worst Turtle. But mid kind of left side centric focus could still provide some extra pressure.
One more wave syndrome gets the best of hunters at times, Dolson, and
it does, doesn't it?
Even when you're aware that there is jungle presence available, Toddy just seems to believe that the fight had dissipated, much like JustF6 here. He doesn't actually have that the Dragon transformation to take over just yet. Worst Turtle just looking to run him down with Rotwin, and not sure Atori's going to be able to intervene.
Worst Turtle does have his ultimate. Oh no. The Echo hits against the wall there, and the final swoop is not enough to get the damage. The snipe's all missing as well. Atori gets a kill in the meantime. Rotwin picks up Atori, and Worst Turtle ends up grabbing the kill on a JustF6. He could have been a lot cleaner there, you feel like, Taco. JustF6 bought a lot of time. Clay Soldiers still lose 2 members. But they dragged it out long enough to pick up an extra kill themselves.
But that starts off with JustF6 honestly having no business being on his own.
Shouldn't happen.
He needs to be nearby someone else as the Fafnir whenever he doesn't have that Dragon transformation available, because otherwise he'll just get walked down, especially when you have the stun and the slow availability between this Terra and the Camazotz. It's difficult to get away from that, Dolson. And
absolutely.
One thing I want to see, though, at Toddy, my man, these Chiron ultimates are leaving a little bit to be desired
Back
here.
into game 1 we go. Appreciate the patience once again, everybody. To recap where we've gotten here, JustF6 found some early kills, early solo kill from Listimics. Clay Soldiers pick up some return kills and some jungle skirmishes there as well, but all things considered, relatively even here. JustF6 maintaining about 500-600 gold in the lead. And really, Taco, both junglers now starting to flex some of that pressure. Worst Turtle finds a couple kills. Saragazek able to do so as well.
A nice attempt there from Shoxy to try and steal those oracles from the safety of the other side of that Oracle Heartbeat wall. However, Worst Turtle making his presence known yet again, and it's impressive that both of these junglers are relatively even. They seem to be the ones thriving the most off of the pressure that has been taking place for both sides.
Yeah, it has. JustF6 has been the Whatever the opposite of that is what the Fafnir has been so far, where
But that's what
Shoxi's-
you would want at least
Sure.
from your support. If he's going to take all of the focus, well, at the very least, as long as Clay Soldiers are able to pick up after the fact, it's not too bad.
Right, could be worse. Look, Shoxy can hit a hammer, right? That's what matters. And Ferricrit can follow up with a big burst of damage. Now the Clay Soldier is back on the board. That'll close up that gold gap just a little bit. And starting some of the compound interest that builds up on some early pressure on this Soul. Fantastic. Now 1 level lead over Sotos, and a kill in the back pocket as well. Need to see some more of that to get Ferricrit into a power position.
And it might be the play here for Clay Soldiers, given the fact that Rotwin, great example of the difference between those reinforced greaves and the cooldown reduction boots. Instead, as Rotwin, a little bit more squishy. Not only that, doesn't have the same amount of crowd control reduction as Itori. Now with the 2-level lead against Toddy, he's going to look to get aggressive here. Beads will be forced out off of a nice hammer stun from Shoxy. And the pressure is definitely clear here for Clay Soldiers. They want this dual lane, and they want their heads on a plate.
I guess that's just the threat of what the follow-up could have been on the back end of that hammer. And the fight now breaking out in the backside of the JustF6 jungle. Sotos finds the first kill, and it's Sarga that goes down before the Achilles execute can come through. There's enough burn damage from the Merlin to cap this one off. Now a Tori, 1 level advantage over his Hunter counterpart. Let's see if these snipes connect. A couple do, but not enough, and just ticks down a little bit of damage. Chases on, though, JustF6. They might have found Shoxy.
Shoxy is going to unfortunately have to jump into that Gold Fury pit, but the detransformation will be the ultimate cleanup factor here for Worst Turtle. On top of the fact that Shoxy's also having to tank blows from that initial Gold Fury pull, just a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, really, Dolson.
Yeah, it was a good last-ditch effort there from Shoxy to try to get out. Still finding some of that pressure. The aggressive nature of this Fafnir still there, but Shoxy has eaten about half of the deaths that JustF6 have fed on over towards the Clay Soldiers. So you ideally don't love that, but still chugging along here on this Fafnir is very important. Upgraded Sunder. Haven't seen the massive value out of it just yet that you'd like early in this game. Has fallen a couple levels behind this Terra here as well. Thebes getting stacked up a little bit earlier. So Rotwin has kind of kept this consistent pace. XP, gold, kills, assists, all of that has just been a bit more consistent here for the JustF6 support.
The Terra counter initiation came through so strong there as well, specifically for Sotos on that Merlin. That Ice Blast just obliterated Saragzek the moment that he tried to get too up close and personal, and that is one of the downfalls, I would say, of the Achilles jungle in comparison to the Camazots, because at least with that Bat Out of Hell, Dolson, you are up in the air and immune to damage once you're finally in that first swoop. But Saragzek, even in that execute, he still has to keep in mind that he's very susceptible to eating all of the Merlin damage and some.
That's right. Net worth effectively dead even. 4 gold separating both of the mid laners here, so they've both kept pace with one another despite a couple extra assists in the back pocket of Sotos here. Sotos gone Divine Ruin, potentially Charon's coin later on. We'll see how that finishes up here. 4 members of JustF6 looking towards Itori here. The snipes 1, 2, and 3 all connecting so far. Itori sends some spears flying, but Worst Turtle, Bat Out of Hell. That one will work out just fine. Now Sarga looking for the stun, but it's only going to connect onto Rotwin. Shoxy doesn't have the damage on the back end either. It's going to be the execute defensively from Sarga. Shoxy Foxy's going to try to get on out, but Sotos has the last bit of damage.
A beautiful collapse there from JustF6, right as it seemed as though Clay Soldiers were going to be able to find a response there onto the dive into Worst Turtle. It's just immediate peel follow through, and that rotation out of Lestimics could not have come at a better time there for JustF6. Anytime you've got a level 14 Kakolin just driving through your backline, you know you are in trouble, and Shoxy being put 2 levels behind still to this Terra, he's definitely going to be slightly better off now that he finally has those Thebes online, but you have to remember, he still needs the 50 stacks before he's really able to feel the benefits of that defense.
Yeah, Rotwin's almost there, and 2 tiers of the next item online there as well. So Worst Turtle on this Camazot's continuing the pace that was set early on. Sarga hasn't quite found the same pace that was set earlier on. Transcendence picked up for the Camazots. Gold will trickle into JustF6 pockets here as the Gold Fury gets taken on down. So Worst Turtle continues to expand upon this lead just a little bit, 1 level over his counterpart over there on the Clay Soldiers. Is the pace of the game, do you think, comfortable for Clay Soldiers at this point, or you need to slow things down? Do you want to speed things up? I mean, how do you get yourself back into a bit of a comfortable spot?
Clay Soldiers keep trying to create avenues of approach here into JustF6's front line, but they are just being bopped flat out, Dulcin. Every single time that it looks as though Rotwin is going to go down or Worst Turtle is going to go down, they just don't have that final piece of the dive to actually collect any return kills just yet. And JustF6 definitely reaping the benefits now. They have a little bit of clear pressure established now on the side lanes, and Itori, even though he's still leading in front of Toddy is just playing his part. He is using his training exercises very efficiently, making sure to bring those cleanses for the team, and you combine that with the AoE route that Rotwin's able to provide on this Terra, it just makes it easy pickings for Sotos, and we saw how quickly that Gold Fury went down between the Radiance and the Dragon Flames. It's tough to contest against JustF6 if they're able to find even one pick against Clay Soldiers, because it's not like Seoul has a immediate objective confirmation either.
I think, Toddy, you gave props to the Chiron, playing the role properly here. When the rest of your team is doing as well as they are, especially when you're going against an Anher, one of your main jobs is probably just not dying over there in the duo lane, or I guess solo lane at this point, on the left-hand side of the map, as Toddy and Notori have largely been left alone. And Toddy, outside of one death, has been able to do so. Mirrored Hunter built outside of Bluestone for Toddy. And a different starter item there for Tori. Shoxy Foxy leaps on in, but we've seen this story a couple of times. It's the root down onto the Fafnir. Ferrocrick in range to do some damage, but this time everyone gets out alive.
Just some nice poke coming through for JustF6 as they make it clear they could be looking for a push approach on this mid T1 tower. V Israel is even going to rotate over with the King Arthur, but of course, if King Arthur comes, Kakolin's going to be right behind him, and Lustimix definitely a little bit more frontline heavy for what it's worth. Dulcin has that mystical mark available as well, so you combine that alongside the Kakolin Rage passive, and
that hurts.
Be problematic.
Rotwin takes a little bit of damage here. Ferrocrick sends the ultimate on out, but it finds next to nothing. So now big burst damage missing from the fight if the Clay Soldiers continue to look for it. There's a transformation from Lustimix though as well. So now that one down, at least until the Rage Bar gets built right on back up. Suppose you admire the thought there, though. Rotwin maybe a bit overextended. Clay Soldiers had an opportunity, but counter to what they've done previously in this game, they didn't overextend, they realized the kill was gone, and they backed off.
But Toddy never came over into the mid lane, so instead he'll get an opportunity with that rotation out of Itori to now just push down that T1 tower. Pyromancer are going to be looked at, though, from Clay Soldiers, and could be a possible skirmish. However, 2v4 certainly not favoring JustF6.
Wow, that is a very fast Pyromancer there for the Clay Soldiers. So a little bit of gold heads on back to the Clay Soldiers. JustF6 still, 4.5 or 2, excuse me, not 4.5 just yet, 2,500 JustF6 are up over the Clay Soldiers. But that's kind of the threat, isn't it? When the Soul starts to get some of those items online, the shred will absolutely be there. But that's also something I think the Clay Soldiers have to be mindful of here of JustF6. When they have the Merlin over on the Chaos side of things here and a slight gold lead, a little bit of experience spread across as well, you could see some sneaky objectives started up.
And not only that, we're very accustomed, I think, to seeing Fafnirs often opt for that Belt of Frenzy themselves, but keep in mind, Rotwin actually just picked up the upgrade for that Belt of Frenzy for his team, and given the fact that there's already very consistent shred potential into these objectives, one more time, have to remember how quickly that Gold Fury went down. Sotos, Toddy, Worst Turtle, more than enough damage, I think, to take down that Fire Giant quickly. So JustF6 could start to go on the hunt here for a pick, because again, Dulcin, I think they only really need the one to have a very strong leverage towards this Fire Giant.
Yeah, it does feel that way. That's been the case throughout most of the part here, or most of the onset of this game here. As the next Fury, it'll be Primal, but it's still another 20 or so seconds away back from respawning. Both soul laners have started to stabilize here. There's always the threat early on. Lustimix gets that solo kill that things could get a little chaotic, but Azriel has done a good job of kind of maintaining the way things are over there in that lane. Bulwark of Hope now picked up for Lustimix. So you thought that this Kokolin was already hard to kill. Now there's going to be some extra shielding to work through. Clay Soldiers, I mean, look, we talk about the damage from the Soul and from the Anhur here as well, and then you have a Fafnir to coerce both of them. You're going to need all that damage to get Listimics here out of the fight.
But that's only if Firecrack's going to even have an opportunity to free cast like that,
Right.
Dolson, because based off this build that the Cullen is opting for, Listimics is basically on Soul Patrol. He is just going to look to blink into the back line and displace Firecrack as much as possible. Doing a great job already, even having the attention pulled from 3 members now of Clay Soldiers. The rest of the team will trickle into mid to try and contest some of this pressure, and Kakolan transformation will wear off, but it doesn't take long for him to stack that rage meter.
Nope.
And you have to remember again that he has those purification beads as well, so he's not necessarily easy to lock down either to peel for Firecrack.
I think it was quick on the draw there. In a good way, the Clay Soldiers were kind of sensing that JustF6 would be quick on that Fury if they started it up. So Clay Soldiers poked their head around the corner, saw that it was pretty low already, about half HP, and JustF6 elect to back things away. So now things starting to build up here a little bit. Clay Soldiers still behind in gold, about the same metric that they were before, but they've sent all 5 members to look towards this Primal Fury. And it's such a tough call on how much you want to spend to try to get this one away. JustF6 has started up the Primal Fury yet again. It's going to burn quickly, as we've talked about, but it gets slightly reset once more. A little bit tense, Taco, on the engage.
Seems as though JustF6 are more interested in the fight than the actual Primal Fury itself, Dolson, and Clay Soldiers seem to be aware of that factor as well, as they choose to try and run down Worst Turtle. Will manage to force out that bat out of hell, so that's a nice dive element no longer being permitted for JustF6 to utilize under this next objective siege. But Itori, Azrael, they're going to waste no time and start pulling this Primal Fury for themselves. Itori taking it, though, probably not the most ideal situation.
Well, Clay Soldiers could do this quickly as well, and Clay Soldiers finish it off. Now JustF6 looking for the fight on the back end as Rotwin and Listimics have found their way into the back line, but there's some great peel as Toddy's got a double kill, and it's the jungler and the support that go down. The 3 surviving members of the Clay Soldiers full-on retreat. At what cost do you get the Primal Fury? Well, it's your jungler and your support, and then maybe something here on the back end if JustF6 look for it.
And Clay Soldiers, they don't really benefit from that at all, Dolson, because all JustF6, like we were just talking about, they wanted the team fight from the get-go, and Clay
See how
Soldiers,
fast this goes down.
they might have gotten the Primal Fury, but if JustF6 are able to confirm this Fire Giant off the back of those 2 picks, that could be the opening that JustF6 needs to begin pulling some of these T2 towers down, and Azrael is going to try to poke his head over, but it's too little too late. Listimics there to cut him off regardless, and it's a freebie back now. JustF6 going to get an opportunity to spend all that gold that they just acquired from simultaneously winning the team fight and the big objective on the map.
How about the confidence, though, from Clay Soldiers? And now we know now after the fact that it's misplaced, but they're behind in gold. The last couple skirmishes haven't been going their way. They look JustF6 in the face and take down the Primal Fury as JustF6 are starting to walk in and engage, and then Toddy's found finally some value out of the range of the Chiron there. A nice double kill will springboard that right back into action. So it felt like a bit of a roll of the dice there for the Clay Soldiers. Just doesn't work out. Now JustF6, they've got 4 towers to play with. This gold lead's going to get a lot worse.
And I can't really fault Clay Soldiers for that decision. I like the fact that they committed for the Primal Fury. What I don't like is how long it took them after the fact to actually begin that disengage, because it had to be a all-in scenario and just bail. But the problem is they kept trying to peel for each other to keep everyone alive, but sometimes you just have to have a sacrificial lamb, and in this instance, or in that Primal Fury instance, I think that was definitely Saragazek. Just have to leave that Achilles to the wayside for JustF6 to collect and maybe bank it on the 4v5 team fight. But I think that what influenced Clay Soldiers there was just Worst Turtle being forced out. Seemed as though it was a nice opportunity for them to pull that Primal Fury outright, and again, while they did manage to take it, that little boost of gold didn't really cut into this experience or gold lead.
No, it really didn't. The gold and experience are going to start swinging towards JustF6 here, and that's, just talking about the towers. If there's a big fight here, the Clay Soldiers, you could lose the game here 23 minutes in. A clean enough fight from JustF6 that's starting right now. Rotwin has dropped the ultimate on the back line, and Tori has been dove on as the front line has found the on her. The roots connect, the Aegis times out, and Listimics, the first one to make his mark here on the fight.
It's just so difficult for Clay Soldiers to actually break away from all of this dive potential out of JustF6, and Listimics, he still has that blink available, going to root Shoxy Foxy in place, but the D-transformation has already gone through. Saragazek will get stunned out by the Terra, but eyes are on Azrael right now as he's forced to retreat.
Yeah, the King Arthur's found his way into the back line, burned the beads off of Sotos there. Blinks are all down for JustF6. Doesn't matter, though. They've gotten the kill onto Ittori, so no Hunter for Clay Soldiers means a freer engage underneath the Phoenix for JustF6. And that means left side Phoenix goes down. Mid lane Tier 2, right side Tier 2 still available. You still got 1 minute and 20 seconds left on this FG buff. And this is where the Clay Soldiers got to decide what's worth fighting over. Can't imagine you show face around these Tier 2s.
No point trying to contest these mid or right side Tier 2 towers, Olsen, especially given the fact that Ittori is still out of the count for another 5 seconds or so. We'll be able to rejoin for the next siege opportunity should JustF6 look to push a little bit deeper, but they're just going to take their wins where they've already gotten them. And the fact that they took out that left side Phoenix, Olsen, that is the best Phoenix to take, given that it is direct opposite of that Fire Giant. It's just going to make it all the more difficult for Clay Soldiers to actually try and look for a period of recovery, because someone's going to have to be on Fire Wave patrol duty.
Yep.
And with that in mind, JustF6 know that they can just bide their time until this next Fire Giant is available, because they're going to have the staggered Phoenix timer to their advantage.
I'm glad I kind of passively look over at the player damage charts here, because I hadn't so far in the game. That's a top damage Terra, 25 minutes in. Not particularly damagey in the build, maybe, but maybe there's enough in there.
No, she's got CDR boots and fully tank after the fact. That's about on par for what I would expect from a Guardian. You know, she's got all the prots in the world, making her ridiculously tanky, but hey man, she built 50 power with those cooldown reduction boots, so it makes sense that she'd be leading the way.
So I'm Merlin in the mid lane. I should just build the cooldown boots and tank after that?
He goes reinforced Greaves, and that's where he benefits most. You know,
right, that makes sense.
The real support is supporting the support.
Got it. Right. Sotos, well, look, he's got 4 assists, which is half of Rotwin's assists, but there are some supporty stats, I guess, over there for Sotos. But look, pretty indicative, I think, of the way this game has gone. There's just been no answer to the Terra dive.
Curious to see if Rotwin opts for the Animosity, though, because he does have the boosted attack
at this point, why not?
from the Witchblade, and hey, damage stats can make an impact here, just like Azrael's trying to make an impact, blinking into the teamfight, but already forced out of his purification beads, and it seems like a soft disengage here for JustF6.
Lystimix takes most of the damage there from Ferrocrick's ultimate, but now can turn the tides. Ferrocrick has to disapparate away. Lystimix has got the double stun, the roar, locks down the kill onto the soul. Shoxy Foxy trying desperately to stay in this fight, but it won't matter. Ferrocrick and Shoxy, they'll be the first to fall. Worst Turtle will notch a kill as well. Sotos getting in on the fun, and Saraga adds 1 for the Clay Soldiers, but it's 4 members of JustF6 on the chase, and Worst Turtle's just going to stop this back. Could be game over.
Worst Turtle just looking for the final piece of the puzzle here, which is the DSI Bat Out of Hell still available. Saragazek trying to buy whatever time he can, but there is just too much force with this Camazotz. Meanwhile, the rest of the team, like you'd already pointed out, Dulcin, they're just going to mosey on over to the Titan Room, uncontested, in a little bit of a strange spot for Clay Soldiers to try and stand their ground. They were rather far out from their base. I do sort of like the idea. I like that they were trying to take the initiative, because at that point, I really do feel like it was only a matter of time with JustF6. Once you get the best Phoenix in the game, it is usually very hard to recover from that. So I think Clay Soldiers had the right idea. It's just Azrael just seemed like he was kind of acting out on his own. I don't know if what the communication was like, but it did not seem like everybody was on board to follow up with that King Arthur.
It almost was a bait and switch where Azrael kind of got that engage, didn't grab the kill, and then the rest of JustF6 backed off when the re-engage kind of came out. It was sort of a bait on in from the King Arthur, then an immediate turnaround. And JustF6 now 1 game away from punching their ticket back into the SCC. We'll take a break and see if JustF6 can finish it off after this.
His enemy, my making it by that remedy. I'm more occasional, don't do it regularly. Backs under my eyes, weighing down heavily. Mama been worried, the devil allegedly deep in the plan. Subconsciously wanted it since I was 10. I thought I was sharp on my scroll and my pen think it did. So mama found shit of them legs. She told me that's not who I am. But nowadays I put on for the fam, see it when I can. I'm surrounded by my feelings, I'm stuck on a Ferris wheel. I bet I perish at 140 acres. She want the horse and the carriage, a porcelain portion of garbage. I talk to the mirror, I know that life's not the fairest. I lost my can, I can't pay off the bills with the blessing. Not sure I relate to the Reddit page. It's feeling like money is everything. Money is everything. It's everything I need. Till I lay my eyes on you. what this is, yeah, but it feel like it's real, baby. I don't wanna pretend, no. I just wanna come clear, wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. Yeah, young, it's the thing. This was everything I need, right? Not so fond of change. I'm too caught up in my way of thinking. I get by on me. No, I don't need nobody. Yes, I was so naive. Somehow I'm still all in on me. Yeah, yeah. Way too many times I let the ball drop. Now I'm Steph Curry with the wrist flick, so they cold shoulders never defrost. No deal, but I pre-floss with the money tree in a deep pot. So I'm corner hangs with the rundown. Bitch, I'm all in the field with the cleats off. Everything that I want out of reach, I had the tunnel vision, couldn't see far. Negative vibes that I feed off got me up and down like a seesaw. All these decoys hit the destroy. Usually keep it poised, but it's ultra violent with the power moves when I deploy. For the real ones, I wanna feel something. Looking for a sign that I might be worth your time. Yeah. When I look into your eyes, it make me feel alive. I don't know what this is, yeah, but it feel like it's real, baby. I don't wanna pretend, no. I just wanna come clear, wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Make me put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on.
Back, everyone, to the SCC Relegation Day as JustF6 stamped their ticket one step closer to making it back to the SCC. They're not quite there yet. That's going to be up to Clay Soldiers here in game number 2 to try and thwart that one. The other thing that's not quite done yet, should also be noted, is the Pride t-shirt and Pride merch over at shop.smiteproleague.com. All proceeds from these either hoodies, shirts, whatever you get, go directly to the Trevor Project and, of course, helping out their I guess, fight against suicide in the LGBT plus community as well as crisis prevention. So obviously it goes to a great place. Plus you get to rep who you are and the SPL all in one go. There's only a week left on these shirts. I'm going to be wearing mine later this week. I'm already planning it probably like Saturday. That seems like a good day to wear.
We should coordinate.
And then being able to lock that in. Go ahead and get yours. There's those two really, really good designs on it. I took one because it has the Smite Lightning Bolt, the Paladin's Crystal, and the Roko logo on it. And I like that one a lot.
Do I have that shirt, or did you just get that one for
No,
you?
I've only seen it in the graphic. I'm going to go buy it.
Let's go buy it.
Yeah,
and you guys should buy it, too.
And guess what? The proceeds will go to the Trevor Project. Anyway, it's Gormizer, William Newberry, and Mifflin. I don't know that I've ever said my name on broadcast like that. That felt weird, and it immediately hit me as something that was, now you know my name. Either way, JustF6, to get back on point, finally get themselves a win, and they kind of just do it, Mifflin. I mean, like the last, we were talking about it, they've lost 2-0 to Clay Soldiers, they won 2-1 to Clay Soldiers, but it's never been an easy fight for them. This time around, they make that game look pretty good.
Yeah, it looked to me like a little bit of frontline diff there. Lestimics in particular has a phenomenal performance out of the Soul Lane, consistently engaging these fights and then occasionally winning them on his own. This Cucullin was such a menace on the battleground of the gods, and it's not just Lestimics in the front line. I think Worst Turtle deserves a little bit of nod himself.
I mean, yeah, this was just insanely good from the right side of the map, right? I mean, Lestimics, you can see absolutely barreling them down. I think I distinctly remember, first off, Birthday Girl Lestimics. I love the fact that he has the title up there. But the other thing that I think is fun is Taco at one point had said, if there's a level 14 Cucullin just running down at your backline, or a 4-0 Cucullin at one point, I guess he goes, 3-0 ultimately, like, it is something you have to be worried about, and he created so much space and made things a lot easier, but you had highlighted this. I think the last pick for JustF6, Worst Turtle does numbers on this Camazotz.
Yeah, we were talking about on the initial desk inside of P's and B's, but Worst Turtle was going to have a very easy time finding targets to dive here because Clay Soldier's draft is lacking in the peel department, and, well, he made full usage of that. This Camazotz was allowed to do just about anything he wanted in the back line, very often using that bat out of hell aggressively rather than as a defensive tool. It does remove you from the play field. You're no longer targetable. He didn't seem to care about that. It was just damage.
6-0-4, 10 affected kills throughout that one. An 8.0 KDA for the jungler. And you know what? While Sotos, Rotwin, Toddy did the numbers and were able to keep up throughout a lot of that, it really was, admittedly, it felt like Worst Turtle and Lestimix kind of driving everything forward for JustF6. And it creates the conversation, I think, going forward that you kind of need to look towards the jungle right now. I mean, Saraga does the highest damage on his team, but it isn't really the impact that you're wanting out of the jungle from Clay Soldiers, and mainly just to stop Worst Turtle.
Yeah, a lot of that damage was poked from a range as well. This Achilles was not super often finding impactful stuns inside these team fights. Instead, it was, all right, I'm going to put out a little bit of damage. If I poke him, maybe my team can finish him off from a range. I want to see Saragazek expedite his process a little bit more. Get involved before the 10-minute mark. Start looking to get involved inside of these side lanes in particular. For the first 15 or so minutes of this game, it felt like to me Saragazek was spending the majority of his time clearing out his own camps. On a god like Achilles, you can get involved from minute 0, and I think that's something he can adapt into this next match.
Well, the last time he ended up switching from the Achilles loss into a Loki game. We'll see if they do the same thing here for Clay Soldiers, or if they give us a different game number 2 than set number 1. So we go into picks and bans for game number 2 here, and once again, Yamoja immediately the first one off the block, Mifflin. And I feel like something similar, what was it, Osiris, the Gilgamesh getting taken away, that was very prominent in set number 1. But we saw Osiris get banned out last time, this Yamoja, the Osiris joining up there again. It feels like we're getting at least some shades of the same game.
So far, but there's still plenty of time to make those adaptations. JustF6 removes Gilgamesh as well as Sobek, Osiris, and I believe it was another frontliner inside of that third slot in game 1.
That was someone.
Someone along those lines. This time around, it is going to be the Soul, and that's the first bit of adaptation on the board. It's usually Clay Soldiers taking that god, though. So, well, if they can't ban Athena, it looks like JustF6 will do it for them.
Yeah, I think that's where I got lost, being able to come through. But guess what? Somebody's got to slip through the ranks. If you keep 5 out of 6 bans the exact same, that 6th ban from game 1 is going to come through. It's the Tiamat locked in. And Mifflin, I want to say, because the way things have been working in the Pro League, there are certain teams you're okay to have Tiamat go to, and certain teams you want to rip it away from any chance you get. Is Clay Soldiers, just from what you've seen out of mid lane, is there going to be enough of a threat from this pick?
I think it's more so that the Clay Soldiers are a team that really likes to play around that mid to late game. 20 minutes is where they really start to group up and start making plays together, which means that that's 20 minutes that Tiamat can just spend farming up on the map. One of the weaknesses of Tiamat is her early game. Her damage output takes a little bit of levels to come online. She needs a couple of items as well to get the value from her passive that generally will fit the Clay Soldier style. But this Bologna, though, that's interesting. And then a Cucullin as well.
Bologna jungle?
Bologna jungle, it might be.
I mean, it's... Look, I'm willing to start accepting things. Tomorrow is when we start playing on mid-season and watching mid-season. Tomorrow, my brain is on, okay, everything's changing. I expect the unexpected. But we get a Bologna here. I love Bologna, but it's not something I'm used to seeing overall. And Cthulhu getting locked in as well. He's been coming through a few times so far this year. And that's a pretty good matchup up against the Cucullin, at least something that's going to be able to stay alive through a lot of those matches.
Should be able to. Descent into Madness is still a great CC tool for your team. You still have phenomenal dive potential come late game, but recently when we've seen Cthulhu get picked, hasn't looked so good, has it, Gore? It takes a lot of time for him to get involved inside of these team fights. But with the draft that they've already built around it, JustF6 that is, Merlin is going to be able to shore up that objective damage. Chiron is going to be very aggressive in lane. We've been seeing him find First Bloods consistently at level 2. Means that Cthulhu can be left alone on that island just to farm up.
It's going to feel good for him. A Kumbhakarna ban kind of catches my eye there. You know, Fafnir Terra makes sense. Heimdall makes sense, but Kumba getting banned out as well by JustF6. And this has been the pick that I think everyone has been going toward a lot more lately. Fenrir, first pick in a lot of the Pro League sets, must ban in some of those sets. He's getting locked in against this Kuzenbo, but it feels like a good jungle pick up there for JustF6.
Could be jungle, could potentially be support, could
Yeah,
even
good
go
point.
in a solo because Cthulhu also has that flex potential. So I'm not willing to bet just yet where JustF6 is going. Maybe it's because of the ambiguity of their draft. Maybe it's because of that bet last week, leaving a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But Clay
You
Soldiers,
touched the hot stove, now
Yeah.
you're not going back.
I learned my lesson. Clay Soldiers, though, I think have a draft that's a little bit more sensible. It's easier to make heads or tails of where these things are going. The only thing is it going to be Bologna in solo? Is it going to be Kakaon in solo? Those are the only two that's a toss-up, but it's very likely going to be a Kuzenbo Uul lane with Tiamat out of mid, and that is an aggressive duo lane.
Now here's the question for you. Kamazot's locked in, can technically solo. Cthulhu's on the board though, so I'm taking solo lane over there. I think this is Kama jungle, so Fenrir, Chiron as a lane versus Kuzenbo Uller. Both of those have a lot of damage potential, but it feels like the Fenrir Chiron's going to get things rolling a little earlier on.
But Fenrir is going to have a little bit of a harder time finding those brutalizes. The axe is going to very consistently and easily be able to stop that in its tracks. So we might see this Fenrir have to shift up the ability order a little bit. Generally, when we see Fenrir support get locked in, it's because they know they're going to be able to get the full channel on that brutalize, and the damage output from it is so good. But now, maybe we see the Seething Howl come through first just for the additional power, or Unchained for a little bit of burst damage.
Well, I'm excited to see it. I'm sure JustF6 are as well. One game away from making it back to the SCC. Let's see if they can do it in game 2.
F6 are on the precipice. Clay Soldiers also on the precipice, but going in the wrong direction. I shouldn't say complicated words twice in a row. You'd think that saying it the first time would like make it easier the second time, but no, it's the exact opposite. Somehow it's harder the second time. But doesn't take away from the gravity of the situations. The Clay Soldiers, they need to win this one and the next one in order to stay in the SCC. They've got a great mid laner in the Tiamat in order to help that cause. But then the Bologna jungle, Taka, I got to admit, it's thrown me for a bit of a loop.
Bologna jungle is very, and by very I mean extremely hit or miss, Dawson. If you're able to get off to a great start, then sure, maybe that Eagles rally is going to have a little bit more of an impact. Have to remember the protections that are being allotted when that ultimate is being channeled. However, it's really just who does Sarah Gazette get to collapse here? Because every single member from JustF6 has a very strong disengage in self-peel alone. So it just seems as though the Bologna is just incredibly dangerous.
Oh, big damage into Rotwen, who has to leap away. Toddy will gallop away here in this lane. I guess that's always the threat, right? When you got an Uller in your lane, the big burst of damage can always find its way on in. Admittedly, Kuzenbo, a bit of an out-of-the-ordinary pick there as well. So in a pivotal game, Clay Soldiers throwing some intrigue here into the mix. Though I think some mid lane is where this Clay Soldiers team will find some concrete, find their home, because the Tiamat pick, hit or miss very early on in her picks in Season 8, but has really found that footing here recently. Big damage numbers, not to mention the ability to split push with the minions and all the flexibility in that kit.
Tiamat's going to definitely rely on farming it out, though, to that mid-late game aspect, Dolson, and that's where we'll really get to see her damage start to take off. But more importantly, looking at Shoxy Foxy, maybe he was out of range. I can't really tell, but the intention from Hattori has been clear. He just wants to play super aggressive, and if Shoxy had just gotten out that Sunder a couple of seconds earlier, that 1-3 combination from the Hail of Arrows and the Bladed Arrow would have definitely been more than enough damage to kill Rotwin. So JustF6 kind of lucking out at the start of this dual lane phase, and no real surprise to see Rotwin struggling a little bit more on this Fenrir, given that there is so much interrupt to his early game potential.
Yep, still a lot of pressure to Clay Soldiers will be happy about here, and I think that's the big thing you sort of mentioned there is Rotwin on this Fenrir. You want to be doing the opposite of what you're doing right now, where you're chilling underneath your Tier 1 tower. What you really want to be doing is getting aggressive, finding some damage, really getting yourself to that level 5 mark where you can set up for either some beads burns or the Ragnarok can find yourself a kill or two on the back end of it. So I think that's important to look at here as well. You got 3 sets of beads picked up early. Saraga, Farrakrik, Hattori all have beads in their back pocket. Do you see enough beads burning from JustF6 to give this Fenrir good value potential when that ultimate starts coming out.
Ragnarok is definitely consistent, at least for Worst Turtle, but as far as the crowd control is actually concerned, JustF6 I think are going to be a little bit more dependent on Listimics to actually start making those rotations in the mid game, largely just wanting to see how the team fights actually break out once the objectives start coming under fire here, Dolson, because Cthulhu just makes everything chaotic. It's just hard to tell in general what's going on through his ultimate.
It's kind of like a different Jabalanke ultimate where, like, you literally turn out the lights with X-Ball's ult, but, like, when there's a giant Cthulhu in the team fight, it's kind of the same vibe a lot of the times with me where I'm just screaming that I can't see anything and I don't know what's going on. So
That's all of us.
Right, it's everyone, I guess. You hope there's probably better coordination at this level of play than me and my ranked teammates, but remains to be seen, I suppose, here. We'll see how much discourse Listimics can spread over this matchup because the Cthulhu, the data points are slim, if not zero, from what we've seen out of this Cthulhu here so far. Goes with the axe start into the power boot, so should be some pressure in that lane, just like there's some pressure over here on the purple buff. Rotwin is brutalizing on through, but has done next to no damage. He's gone too soon, and now the re-engage from Worst Turtle is there. The Bat Out of Hell swoops through, doesn't hit the damage on the first or the second. Worst Turtle grabs the kill, but it's a push back through to secure for Shoxy Foxy.
A little bit of an overcommit there for JustF6. Sure, you finally clean up Ettore, but he's already gotten the first blood bounty, and Toddy backing when he could arguably stay for an extra wave just so that he reaps some of the benefits of his team having committed so much just to kill that Uller. But if he's not going to even take advantage of having the wave clear over Ettore, Ettore really doesn't miss out on anything for that.
Yeah, not super far behind. Actually, Ettore still ahead thanks to that early kill that Ettore has gotten there. About 200 or so gold is the lead that Ettore has. Serga was in the zone at least, so maybe concerned about that was Toddy, but can absolutely see where you're coming from there, where slightly more farm might have helped you out if you're Toddy. Where's Turtle looking over here towards the right-hand side of the map? It's just a blue buff that's up. A ward is on it, and that'll show that Worst Turtle is free and clear to find some pressure here on the right-hand side of the map.
And I think that this is where we start to see the woes of Bologna Jungle, because in comparison to a Camazotz, the buff clear is definitely going to favor that of Worst Turtle, especially with the Vampiric Bats. It's going to be really difficult, I think, for Suragazek to match Worst Turtle's pacing. And we even saw him at the tail end of that mini skirmish that took place in between the T1 and T2 tower there for Clay Soldier. Suragazek did appear. It was just after everything had already ended just about, and you almost have to question whether or not that's going to be a reoccurring theme here for Clay Soldiers.
Could be a 3 versus 2 fight in the mid lane. Faircrick jumped on, but will leap away. Has to use the beads, and I think Rotwin happy to make that trade, to use the ultimate, quickly exchanged out for the beads of Faircrick. Tough to kind of get in onto this Tiamat, though. Has the leap for the disengage, especially later on. Tiamat happy to be fighting kind of down in there in the trenches, able to turn around some of that damage. So Faircrick staying safe here in the mid lane, has maintained level equity with Sotos on the other side. Ultimate over here in the solo lane. We'll just get some pressure for Listimics. Could be more, though, as Worst Turtle is here as well. Azriel has knocked up Worst Turtle on the backside of the fight here. There is a Bat Out of Hell, but the damage not quite connecting. Now Azriel has a chance to turn things around, and it's a defensive Bat Out of Hell on a questionable Tier 1 tower dive from JustF6.
2-for-1 exchange, though, is definitely going to favor that of Azriel, as he'll force Listimics and Worst Turtle to retreat with their tails between their legs, and that opens the way for Clay Soldiers to now punish with a mild invade. Rotwin not going to really jump in just yet. Doesn't really make sense in the 2v1 scenario, given the fact that the Kokolin is still trying to create as much pressure as possible. But a back harpy steal for a dive where neither Worst Turtle or Listimics dies, that's not the worst case scenario there by any means for JustF6.
No, not horrible. JustF6 keeping themselves in this game. It's just a 600 gold lead for the Clay Soldiers so far. That early kill bounty may be making the largest difference here. Important as well that Serga shown up for 1 assist so far here in this game, maintains about a 1-level lead over what Worst Turtle has there with the 1 kill on that side. I am curious what direction this Bologna starts to go build-wise. Ninja tab I picked up here. Something in the Katana tree will be that next item. Could you just see full-on attack speed Bologna being viable here?
I think that Saragazek's looking for that stone cutting just because the passive will play nicely, especially through each of Bologna's stances, particularly in that sword and shield stance. But hold that thought, because Foxy under fire now. Watery Grave going to be forced out, but he's caught out instantly by Worst Turtle. Just a 3-man presence as Ferrocryk doesn't have those beads available. Have to remember, Rotwin just forced them out, and Ragnarok will seal the deal here. And a 2-for-0 response. Clay Soldiers, just nobody in position to really help out there in the mid lane.
Yeah, it's a questionable decision. You have to feel like from Ferrocryk there, you don't have beads. I mean, maybe best case scenario is that Rotwin had used the ultimate elsewhere on the map, but that's something certainly that the Clay Soldiers would have communicated. So maybe just trying to get some damage on the back end, but does not work out there. And Ferrocryk now dives for the first time this game. That's given Sodos a bit of a level lead, probably a bit of a gold lead there. Over in the mid lane, definitely 200-300 gold is what Sodos has now. So a little bit of scaling potential here from this Merlin. Merlin's been such an interesting pick where these teams have felt pretty comfortable slotting that in. Just, hasn't been the knockdown, drag-out performance just yet.
Merlin being exchanged for the Tiamat is always an interesting dynamic because both of those mid lane presences are definitely pretty scary for any team to deal with. However, I think because of the consistent beads burn potential out of JustF6, thanks to this Fenrir that Rotwin's rocking in the support, I'm just not seeing the value out of the Bologna jungle right now, Dolson. It just seems as though Saragazek is trying to do what he can to show face on the map, but and granted, sometimes you're just unlucky. Sometimes it is just like not in the right place at the right time, but I just don't see how this core of Bologna, Tiamat, Kuzenbo is going to fare as time goes on against the likes of Fenrir, Merlin, and the Camazotz, because the burst is just a lot more consistent for JustF6. I would definitely argue that the crowd control is also a little bit more consistent there. It just seems, I've been saying it a lot today, but awkward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Clay Soldiers have found these small moments, but maybe not their feet underneath them just yet. Toddy gallops on in, sends Atori running the opposite direction. Worst Turtle is here, has Bat Out of Hell. Atori has beads, though, and a leap out of this fight, so the leap gets used early on here. Worst Turtle connects with some damage onto the back end. Foxy's going to rotate in over from the purple buff, but Worst Turtle uses the Bat Out of Hell to confirm the kill on the back end, though. Rotwin has used a Ragnarok that'll pull Foxy back into range. I think the Kuzenbo will survive, and yet again, an early pick here as Atori goes down.
And what's weird is that Shoxy took Sunder, upgraded Sunder at that incredibly early on, and yet I don't think we've seen a single instance of Clay Soldiers actually having an opportunity to play around this Kuzenbo and that Sunder for damage. Foxy actually, without that Watery Grave, he's going to be followed through the Brutalized. Watery Grave actually does buy him enough time to escape, as well as Saragazek, but even then, it's not really Saragazek so much as it is the target focus shifting elsewhere.
Worst Turtle thought he might get a pick over on the Ferrocryk, but instead it's Serga who drops down the flag and returns the favor to JustF6. A leap away from Rotwin is Azriel on the Kilcullen. Look, the massive impact from Kilcullen in game one. And Clay Soldiers will need some of that from Kilcullen here in game number 2. Rotwin does not want to give up this red buff for free, but Sodos has something else in mind as he runs away beneath the tier 2 tower. It's the root and the roar for the kill for Beazriel. And the Clay Soldiers have evened up the kills, they've evened up the gold. Now they've got pressure pushing against JustF6.
A nice rotation out of Azriel that's going to bail out the Clay Soldiers and create now this opportunity for a red buff invade to go down successfully. Foxy surviving when he did, just baiting the entirety of JustF6 inwards. And Worst Turtle maybe not respecting some of that Bologna stone cutting damage enough when he chose to continue diving onto Ferrocryk after having already expended his Bat Out of Hell. If they just play a little bit more passive after dropping the kill, or I shouldn't even call it a drop kill on Shoxy, he just got out, realistically, and that was the time to just leave, and no one would have had to have died from JustF6. Instead, because they kept pushing inwards, it created an opportunity for Beazriel to make a heads-up play. Yeah,
Beazriel's done most of the damaging duties for the Clay Soldier here so far. Ferrocryk and Serga on the literal bottom of the damage charts, 1,400, 1,500 respectively for the jungler and the mid laner of Clay Soldiers, yet the kills and the gold and largely the XP looking somewhat even, if not slightly in favor of the Clay Soldiers. Tori's going to get some pressure here from Worst Turtle. It's been a lot of purple buff pressure from JustF6 here so far on the bottom left-hand side of the map. Shoxy Foxy, though, comes back after a great disengage there underneath the Tier 2 tower. And I think JustF6 probably smart here to back away. We don't have great vision on where all the Clay Soldiers are, so we need to leave.
Had that initial Vampiric Bats connected onto a Tori, that would have been a nice swing of burst damage that could have maybe created an entryway for JustF6 to keep pushing onto Clay Soldiers duo side, but Itori just has to be incredibly careful now, I think, with his positioning, because we've already seen it happen once. He was halfway up the lane even, Dolson, not even that egregiously out of position, but Worst Turtle understands all he has to do is play the patience game, because Uller is just, without a CC immune ultimate and only having the one leap for a getaway, it's difficult to actually escape against the likes of a Camazotz and the range that Toddy can provide as well with his ultimate.
Did see some of that earlier on as Worst Turtle was able to chase down a kill over here in the duo lane onto a Tori. Toddy with the 1-level lead, still a slight disengage from himself there in that fight as a Tori going ability based with the first couple of items. No surprise there on the Uller, able to trade effectively into Toddy. Could be an interesting, I mean, I don't know if we'll start to see that much more of this Uller Taco, but maybe against a pick like the Chiron, a Tori from range can maybe find some damage, and that's what you need in a lane like that. Rotwin pulls Azriel underneath the Tier 1 tower here, but Azriel totally fine with it. He's going to chase down Sotos over there in the mid lane. Aegis is going to get used on the Merlin as Eagles rally from Saraga. Will try to keep this fight going in Clay Soldier's direction, and it will. 2 kills already fall, a third right around the corner, but Rotwin survives somehow with next to no HP, and now all 5 members of Clay Soldiers looking for the Tier 1.
Clay Soldiers just had the numbers present, and Rotwin, maybe a little bit of a lapse of judgment there. Last thing you want to do is carry the level 15 Kakolin into your level 13 Merlin, because solo laners do not care about T1 towers. Azrael barely has to even care about the T2 tower. He is tanking those shots like it is nothing. And a little bit of short-sightedness there from Rotwin. Just wanted to get some benefit, I think, out of the Ragnarok, but you just have to remember who your target focus is actually on. Sotos not only loses both of his relics for that, but now it creates a little bit of a power play moment here for Clay Soldiers, unless Tori will fall.
Let's see what a Tori can do here, and pretty well is the answer. Slow connecting onto the Uller. The snipes on in from Toddy as well, but low health, no mana. Not a problem. As the reinforcements are in, the Clay Soldiers are able to get on over to the left-hand side of the map. Keep their Hunter on the map. Now Saraga over in the mid lane, looking for some damage onto Sotos. Will do one better, forced to flicker away, but look at the grouping. Look at the rotation from the Clay Soldiers. They found their way underneath the Tier 1, forces that bat out of hell, and the pressure continuing to mount here. Half HP left on the tower.
JustF6 trying to do everything in their power to keep this T1 tower standing. Listimix trying to tank whatever he can, but Azrael, he's still putting in work here for the Clay Soldiers. This front line Kakolin definitely making his impact known on the map right now, and he's creating so much space for Saragazek to actually perform with this Bellona, especially now that Saragazek has that Void Shield online. When you pair that alongside the Stone Cutting, so many prots being eaten away at for the front line of JustF6.
Now Tori jumped on once again. This time the beads are going to get used, and Rotwin actually the one who takes the most damage here in this engagement. Azriel, chance for a kill here onto Worst Turtle, who used the bat out of hell. Remember, in the mid lane, the chase continues on. Some sustain coming through here from Worst Turtle. Just one more rotation of cooldowns is all Azriel needs, but Listimix has found their way on over into the right-hand side. Blink gets used here. Azriel could turn around some damage onto Worst Turtle, but won't have the time to do so, and Worst Turtle pick up the 2v1.
It doesn't matter if Worst Turtle can't connect with the Vampiric Bats or the Screech. He's got Listimix to make the kill opportunity happen, and a great punish for JustF6 could put a slight delay now onto Clay Soldiers' snowball opportunities that they were starting to generate, Dolson, which not sure what the trade-off is just yet, but Clay Soldiers are going to try to take this chance for a Gold Fury pull.
Azriel still 20 seconds away. JustF6 will have an idea that this one's going on. Gold Fury down, half HP. Sotos can rotate on in. He's on the Merlin, could burn down the last bit of damage. Clay Soldiers take down the Gold Fury with a 4v5 disadvantage on the map. JustF6 did spend too much time over on the right-hand side. And not a massive spike here, but gets Clay Soldiers right back in the lead with gold.
But where you lose one, throwing everybody else to the opposite side of the map usually pans out very well. And Clay Soldiers, I think, great opportunity there for them to strip away that Gold Fury, although JustF6 will respawn in kind. They do take out the Pyromancer to at least generate some fun, so the game's still incredibly even between these two teams.
Sure is. Azriel is going to make his way on into the his own blue buff here. Loses it, though, as JustF6 continue to mount a little bit of pressure over there. Haven't seen the Cthulhu rotate into these fights just yet. We've said Azriel's name plenty of times, it feels like, on the jumps back in, the tier 1 tower dive, and then some pressure in some of the jungle fights. Just haven't seen the Cthulhu rotate in. When the Cthulhu does rotate in, it's going to be with a 1-level advantage, an assist in the back pocket, and decently underway as far as the build goes.
But this is also what you would expect from a Cthulhu. It's hard to match some of these early to mid-game rotations that Azriel has made possible, so it's really just come down to JustF6 needing to have the awareness that it is a lot more likely for Azriel to show up to these engagements first. And with that in mind, it's ultimately on JustF6 to properly utilize their comms to just back off. I think a lot of the kills that have happened for Clay Soldiers have largely just been on the back end of JustF6 overextending or just not actually recognizing the severity of the situation and how outnumbered they really are in a lot of these engagements.
Agreed. I just want to see how kind of the face of these fights change once JustF6 have kind of a full 5v5 against what the Clay Soldiers are bringing, because Cthulhu is such an interesting and a unique position. We've talked about it earlier on, just causes such disarray outside of damage and control that the pick can bring to the table. Control of this game getting wrestled back and forth here. We're 19 minutes in. Clay Soldiers had a 500 gold lead a minute ago. JustF6 now holding a 400 or 500 gold lead. These next few minutes are going to be so important. Pyromancer down for another 2-3 minutes or so. Fire Giant is there, but I imagine with the state of the game right now, with how even things are, it would be a very difficult call for either of these teams to start it.
Even with Clay Soldiers having secured that Gold Fury, Dolson, I think one of the primary issues that's taking place here is the fact that Azriel died to Worst Turtle. It was Worst Turtle who collected that big colon bounty, and that actually shot him up and ahead of Saragazek after Clay Soldiers, I think, had done a fantastic job at actually suppressing this Camazotz for a good portion of the game, at least the first 14 minutes or so. It seemed as though Worst Turtle was really going to have some struggles, but one kill sometimes really is all it takes when you factor in some of those kill reward bounties. And again, it was really just the level gap that Azriel had over Worst Turtle that made that such a favorable kill for Worst Turtle to collect.
What do we think about the way Atori's build is going here? Transcendence, Jotun's Heartseeker, and then a dagger a bit later on in the build. Is that sort of what you expect here on a pick like this?
And this is the classic Uller Boombas. I'd imagine he's going to extend it into a Boombas Hammer, because you have to remember a lot of AA cancellation involved with the Uller kit outright, so Boombas definitely only going to enhance that given the damage after the fact once that item is online. But again, he'll have to wait until he's level 20 before he even has an opportunity to finish building it. My main concern here is how relevant Atori's damage is actually going to be against the likes of this Cthulhu, because even with the Heartseeker, there isn't as much health shred as what Clay Soldiers probably are in need of, so a lot of that pressure, I think, being thrown back onto Farakrik to kind of make up the difference.
Yeah, and anti-heal is going to be pretty important here as well. Astimix got Gaia online, Sodos, a little healing in that soul gem there as well. Farakrik has Divine Ruin, Tainted Steel for Azriel, and Bit in the Colcullen kit as well. Looks like a fight is brewing here around the Fury. It's a dash through from Listimix as the Cthulhu makes his way into the fight. In the 5v5, I should say, for kind of the first time this game. There's a great example, Taco. That's not a full rotation from Atori, but decent damage attempted to put in on Listimix. Does not connect. Toddy burns away Shoxy Foxy with the help of Sodos.
Shoxy looking like turtle soup there, just getting roasted alive in that Radiance and Dragon Flames. And now Farakrik in some deep trouble as Cthulhu just continues to dive. Egg is going to be expended, but Worst Turtle doesn't care. He's got the bat out of hell to make up for it. An Eagles rally out of Saragazik, but Purification meets Worst Turtle are going to buy him some time. Rotwind, though, in some trouble, will get cleaned up by the Blade of Arrows, and now it's up to Listimix to try and bail himself out.
3 members surviving from JustF6, 3 members surviving from Clay Soldiers. Atori, if that axe connects. Got to imagine Sodos not long for this world. Beads get used here from Sodos. Maybe sensing a dive back in from Clay Soldiers, but if this game wasn't already even enough, It's another relatively even trade here in this fight. Slight advantage on over to JustF6. But Rotwin, Worst Turtle, they go down. On the other side, you lose your jungler, and or your support, excuse me, and your mid laner. Not going to slow down Clay Soldiers, though. It's Primal Fury being looked at now. Tori is going to be the one zoning out Toddy. On back around the backside. Double carries for JustF6. Gives them a good advantage here in this fight. Some damage sent that way from Sotos. It's a stun onto Listimics, and now the Cthulhu is going to have to dash away as Shoxy Foxy is back from base.
It looks as though Toddy is trying to do whatever peel he can, and Shoxy, having died so early on in that engagement, he'll actually get an opportunity to beat JustF6 back for the numbers game on the Primal Fury, but
wow.
Saragazek might have bit off a little bit more than he could chew. Ragnarok going to be another Purification Beads for him, but more importantly, the Brutalize to seal the deal.
Oh, Shoxy Foxy's going to get leapt on here as well. Rotman with a double kill. It seemed like a matter of time before the Fenrir started to swing, and JustF6 pulled a big advantage here in game number 2. And they're going to get the Primal Fury. So the gold right at 2,000 prior to that, right at 3,000 after the fact. And this is where you got to keep your nerves under control. JustF6 are one game away from rejoining the SCC, from knocking the Clay Soldiers out of the SCC. You've got an advantage here in this game. You win a great fight. Cthulhu showed some face, got 4 assists there in that engagement. This is where JustF6 need to maintain control and see this game out.
But that was also a great example of what we were talking about when we mentioned how difficult it would be for Clay Soldiers to actually look for the stuff after the team fights. They just could not pull that Primal Fury despite having a small advantage in terms of the HP bars. And Listimics, he's looking to collapse and trap Azrael, although a nice axe stun onto Rotwin's going to force a mild disengage here for JustF6, but they'll just look to re-aggress onto the Fire Giant. It's up to Clay Soldiers to really get in there and give a reasonable force-off to that FG.
All right, you got Sotos and Toddy just pouring out damage onto the Fire Giant. It's down to half HP, but now the sides have somewhat flipped. Worst Turtle deleted by Tori. Listimics goes big into the backline, but look at the Clay Soldiers. They're collapsing in on the backline of JustF6. Saraga gets it turned around as Toddy tries to find the autos, but they are not there. It's a knockback onto Farrakrick, but Saraga picks up one. It's a double for Tori, and somehow the Clay Soldiers have bought enough time to grab 4 kills as the deicide around the corner, and the Clay Soldiers win a big fight.
Just a mess and a half there for JustF6. They were so split. No one to really follow up and collapse off of either of those frontlining members. Rotwin and Listimics arguably in their own engagements, and it just pulled too much of the actual follow-up pressure for JustF6 away from each other. This is a composition that relies very much so on staying together, and Rotwin, while he's made his intent clear that all he wants to do is harass Farrakrick, we've seen him pulling Farrakrick's relics very consistently, but it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for Worst Turtle to try and isolate Tori there when the focus seemed to clearly be on the Farrakrick.
That's right. It's going to be a full 5 members with FG now for Clay Soldiers. In the meantime, this is a great splitting of priority as well. While JustF6 are all effectively dead, we're going to send only the people we need on over to the FG, and we're going to send the rest towards the mid lane. Grab a couple of towers there. Right side tier 1. Still yet to fall, but Clay Soldiers, they've all got like 2K gold to go back and spend here. So massive power spike in this game for the Clay Soldiers. They were 3K or so behind, now are 3K or so ahead. So about a 6K gold swing in the last couple of minutes here of this game have given Clay Soldiers a fantastic advantage and a chance to force us on to a game number 3 here. Still lots of towers standing, tier 2 and 1 in both left and right. And so JustF6 are going to have to choose if those are even worth fighting for here. Maybe you'd like to keep some extra structure standing. We're pretty late in the game. You lose your life under one of those towers, and Clay Soldiers have maybe a game-ending advantage.
But you have to remember, Clay Soldiers, I think the real battle has only just begun, because when you're sieging into the likes of a Merlin, Sotos can be a huge playmaker here for JustF6. The real storyline is going to be whether or not JustF6 frontline actually manages to stay with him this time. That Fire Giant fight largely just goes south because of the fact that Sotos left to his own devices pretty much. You know Merlin's going to have to be playing very heavily into the back line, and Sotos now already utilizing some of that clear to just take out the pressure that we have seen. These Tiamat minions also might be better suited to be shifted to another lane, so that way Clay Soldiers can try and generate a split push opportunity to threaten JustF6.
Yeah, Farrakrick with trying to stay on this side of the map instead of dropping the minions elsewhere. They do assist in providing some space here. Now the siege starting to begin. Foxy eating up some of that Phoenix damage. Rotwin roared on through here. Now the Ragnarok is out, but Rotwin de-transforms, leaps on back into the back line as Foxy spins around and knocks up a couple members of JustF6. Worst Turtle has died somewhere else here in this fight, and the Clay Soldiers find a Phoenix. They find an opening kill. They've got some damage onto Rotwin as well, who has to leave.
Worst Turtle just could not handle the pressure of that Kakolint plus the Bologna left alone in that mid lane. The split push, although right next to each other, does happen to work out here for Clay Soldiers, and it's also the speed at which Clay Soldiers are looking for these sieges that have helped them out the most. Sotos now does have both his Aegis and Purification Beats available yet again, but damage has already been done.
Big fight in the mid lane now as Azriel, the first to leap on in. Listimix, top damage in the game as we stand, and you'll need a little bit more of it to keep this fight at bay. Worst Turtle still 18 seconds away from being back in respawn, but I think Clay Soldiers make the right call here. They realize still a couple towers standing, and cross our T's, dot our I's, get these last couple towers, grab the right side Phoenix, and force us onto a game 3.
Just no real reason for Clay Soldiers to overstay their welcome. We've already seen how much it's gotten the better end of JustF6 in this match, and Clay Soldiers, they're not looking to repeat any of the opposition's mistakes, as Clay Soldiers probably pretty satisfied with the fact that they got 2 incredibly ideal Phoenixes, and they took them so late that when this next Fire Giant spawns, Dolson, it's going to be incredibly difficult because there's a potential for the enhanced Fire Giant to be on board, because I imagine JustF6 are going to try to delay just a little bit to really try and force Clay Soldiers to just take as much damage as possible from that EFG should they look to pull it first.
It is full attack speed minus the Void Shield here for Sarago on this Bologna. And admittedly, Taco, that's the type of build I only throw out in like Arena if I'm just trying to mess around, but maybe has some value here. 4-1-6 for Saraga. Has whittled down those health bars on a pretty consistent basis here, and now buying enough space for the Primal Fury.
I will say, though, not particularly a fan of Vittori's last choice item. Feel like he might have been better suited just looking for either a chin size or some form of sustain. He's really relying very heavily on just that natural sustain that he gets from that fourth ability on his stance. It's just the passive heal that's available for Uller, but an Aussie might have been a little bit better suited for him. Crusher just doesn't really have as much benefit when you 6-item buy it.
Sure. Tori, has let some of that damage stick here. Was about halfway through the damage charts 10 or so minutes ago. Is now leapt on up to about third to highest. And so still making a case. Listimix is eating a lot of that damage for what it's worth.
I'm also just trying to think about him with a Deathbringer, because Tori has had great placements on his axe stuns, and I just feel like if you're going to opt for the blink on Uller, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to not follow it up with a big form of crit like a Deathbringer, because at the very least, if you blink in axe stun, you might get the chance for a huge crit right after the fact, and that's a decent chunk of damage to work with.
That's a great eye. Didn't even realize he had blink. We'll see how Tori uses it in this final fight. Well, enough damage is connected onto him in the backline. It's a double leap through as Tori being chased down. Swoops come through from Worst Turtle, but the leap away from Tori should secure his life for a little bit longer. In the meantime, JustF6, they're being chased down by the Clay Soldier. Sotos gone. Rotwin gone. Listimix left to his own devices, and it looks like the Clay Soldiers have done it. It's a double kill from Saragazek. Fire minions pouring into the Titan room, and Clay Soldiers, they've got 4 to do it.
And only 2 members left to try and play defense, and one of them doesn't even have an ultimate available. Worst Turtle, without that bat out of hell, he could potentially get picked off, given that he does still have his Purification Beads, but it is solely Toddy right now trying to hold down the fort. Worst Turtle going to approach from the flank position. The damage is too much to handle. This Titan's going down, Dolson.
It is. Clay Soldiers into the Titan room they go. A kill onto Worst Turtle just to seal the deal, and Clay Soldiers send us on to a game number 3.
Can't say that I'm surprised at how that one shook out towards the very end there. I think that the idea was definitely on the right page there for Worst Turtle. He knew that it was best to try and isolate that Uller, take him out. The problem was just too many resources being invested towards killing a sole Uller player, and when you're leaving a Tiamat to just rain open fire on your back line, well, Firecrack definitely made up for the difference.
I mean, JustF6, they jump on into Tori, they get the Uller out of the fight, but you're spending 2 to get one guy out, and then it's a lopsided engagement over there on the other side, and the Clay Soldiers stay alive. One more game for JustF6 or the Clay Soldiers to make it back into the SCC. Stick around. It's up next.
Wanna come clear, wanna see you again. Yeah, young, it's the thing. This was everything I need, right? Not so fond of change. I'm too caught up in my way of thinking. I get by on me. No, I don't need nobody. Yes, I was so naive. Somehow I'm still all in on me. Yeah, yeah. Way too many times I let the ball drop. Now I'm Steph Curry with the wrist flick, so they cold shoulders never defrost. No deal, but I pre-floss with the money tree and a deep pot. So I'm Cornell Haynes with the rundown. Bitch, I'm all in the field with the cleats off. Everything that I want out of reach, I had the tunnel vision, couldn't see far. Negative vibes that I feed off got me up and down like a seesaw. All these decoys hit the destroy. Usually keep it poised, but it's ultra violent with the power moves when I deploy. For the real ones, I wanna feel something. Looking for a sign that I might be worth your time. Yeah. When I look into your eyes, it make me feel alive. I don't know what this is, yeah, but it feel like it's real, baby. I don't wanna pretend, no. I just wanna come clear, wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. I wanna see you.
How you gon' lie when you look me in my eyes and you show me a facade? Show me a facade. How you gon' lie when you look me in my eyes and you show me a facade? Show me a facade. You a lie. You a front, you say anything long as you get what you want. Tryna play me like a fool, homie, I am not a clown. It ain't nothing but a game, cause all you do is mess around. Now I'm on the verge of a meltdown, meltdown, meltdown. I should've known when I met her back at Midtown, at Dogwood, when I was going through a rough patch, but it's all good. I even told about the dark times I had in childhood, when we was driving off of I-10 in Kirkwood. Now all that time I never get it back. You wanted that, used to hate when I didn't wanna hang. I noticed that, used to talking about your ex, Jake, with your next jack. Used to messing with them white boys, now she went black. Wait a minute, guess you went and got yourself a real life. Got yourself some booty shots and live filler. You just wanna make a rapper beat like Dilla. You ain't nothing nice, radiator has pictures up close. Baby, you a ghost, you a demon, and you should float. Get out the way and just go, and just go, and just float, float, float. How you gon' lie when you looking in my eyes and you say you down for the cause, but you really here for the ride? You ain't really feeding no sheep. You're a K9 in disguise. Should've never gave you nothing but a funky high five. I know we can't go back in time, but I wish I could rewind and get back all that money that I spent every nickel and dime. Cause you a lie. Oh, you a front. You gon' say anything as long as you get what you want. When you got yourself a new man, it ain't even been a month. I feel sorry for your boo, cause he don't know what he signed up for. Do he? Ooh, yeah, I heard that you met him at the bar, Louis. Hope you don't try to do him like you tried to do me, baby. You a cold-blooded killer like Stu. Cause up close, baby.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Challenger Circuit Relegations. Just one game separates both of these teams from either being in the SCC or getting completely eliminated. I didn't even realize I'm matching JustF6 right here in the maroon, but we'll have to see if they can get it together. Because game number 2 was not the path that they would have liked. Once again, Gormizer over there is Mifflin. And Mifflin, they had a turnaround. I mean, Sarah, look, we've watched 4 games today with Clay Soldiers in it. And we've seen one of them where Serica was very prominent and impactful, and it was this last one.
And on Bologna at that, felt like an unorthodox pick for him to get involved on incredibly early on. But you know what? If it works for you, if you're comfortable on it, clearly you're able to make some strides. And This game was almost an inverse of Game 1. It felt like a little bit of frontline diff coming through from the Clay Soldiers, and I think B. Asriel in particular has to get a shout out here, man. He takes the Kakulin away from Lestemix and makes it look just as good as Lestemix did.
I think that's the big key, right, where it looks just as good. I mean, level 12, running it down into a Tier 1 tower, Tier 2 tower right there in mid. The pressure that these two warriors were able to apply opened up a lot of space. And, wow, man, I wonder who would love having a lot of space. Oh, I guess probably your Uller in the background, right? We got to see Ittori come through. That was maybe the perfect segue ever that comes through. And it's just this Uller got to create and work with so much room. I mean, look at this. Nobody's looking at him. Nobody can get to him right now because they're so focused on this front line.
Yeah, not often Ittori is going to be allowed to free cast on a rampaging Cthulhu, descent into madness, and drop him all the way down, man. These guys clearly got it together here, but one more game is what it's going to take. Both of these teams want to be inside of the SCC. Winner gets to go back into the league. Loser gets to go home.
You have to remember that the track record, technically, and 3 game sets, this goes to JustF6, but overall, the track record for both of these teams, Clay Soldiers had a lot more wins, a lot more pressure in the SCC than JustF6 did during this last phase. Now JustF6 made a lot of those appropriate changes, and very similar to what we just saw Clay Soldiers do, they moved themselves forward into a very interesting position. And now I'm curious, going into game number 3, what exactly we are going to see from both of these squads. I mean, you got a really big swing into a Bologna jungle there from Clay Soldiers. The best way to figure it out is to go into picks in bands. Mifflin, if you're JustF6, what do you do here?
If I'm JustF6, I'm either trying to take Kakulin inside the first pick or ban it out, because this set has been a story of frontliners. Which team has had the frontline that's been able to create more space, get involved a little bit earlier on in Game 1? It was JustF6 off the back of the Kakulin play out of the Soul Lane. Lestemix looks really good. Game 2, B. Asriel does the exact same thing there. I think you have to put a lot of emphasis on the front line of the P's and B's here, and already JustF6 doing just that.
Well, Gilgamesh got banned away here. We've seen Yamoja, we've seen Soul. Soul once again going to be taking one of those spots. Tiamat made it through last game. This time JustF6, if she makes it through, have the chance to scoop her on up in their favor. It's going to be the Sobek once again. It's like you said, been a lot of frontline, but the Kakulin's been making it through both times. Same thing for that Bologna, not somebody that you're going to ban too often. And with the 4 bans up there being pretty standard, it means that there's going to be a lot of flexibility for this first pick.
Yeah, Merlin now removed from the table as well. Seems like Kakulin is going to work their way through here. Wouldn't be overly surprised if we see JustF6 taken in the first slot. But Clay Soldiers don't have to feel too bad about it. I mean, King Arthur's still out there. If they want to, they can go towards the Chiron as well. Kakulin is going to be the lock-in first overall for JustF6, so we'll see what the response is from Clay Soldiers.
So speaking of this King Arthur, I mean, you know, Kakulin was locked in game 1. I think he was up against the King Arthur. I can't remember all the way back there. Very difficult. But then you moved into game 2, and it was up against Cthulhu, of all things, right? Now, potentially going up against this Osiris, banned both of these previous games, makes things a lot more interesting, right? Being able to move forward as to what they're going to be able to bring. Osiris, Bologna, Serga's going right back to it.
Yeah, Serga said, look, it's finally worked out for me. I finally get a game that I'm popping off in, so I might as well try and run it back exactly as I do. So Bologna locked in, but Athena still available, Defender of Olympus, going to be very good for dealing with this early aggression from Clay Soldiers. Not only are you giving someone on the map 30% damage mitigation, but also you're giving them another body, you're giving them some taunts, some slows, great CC, and now we get a good look at what could be the duo lane of JustF6. Athena still does have some of that flex potential, could potentially go into the jungle, but very likely is going to be the support, and if it is the case, Athena and on her together, that's very aggressive.
Well, Giannis locked in. This is getting interesting, spicy as things come through. I completely forgot about this Athena. Erlong going to get banned out here, but we can ignore the bans for a little bit, as most of them I expect to be a little more standard. Yanis, Bologna, Osiris feels like a really good top 3. I feel like those 3 can mesh together really well, and if Serica can get back under their feet what they just did, things are going to look really good. As once again, there's the Kumba Silla ban. They go Shing Chin. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, Mifflin. I really like Clay Soldiers' draft.
Clay Soldiers do have an incredibly strong draft. I mean, Bologna is still a question mark for me. Is it just a lightning strike situation? Can you really catch it in a bottle and do it again on such an unorthodox pick? Well, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the jungler over there, I'm sure he'd like to run it yet again. But meanwhile, JustF6, I think, have come away with a pretty strong draft in their own right. Good CC, standard engagement. Athena's going to be able to use Confound consistently to burn off bees as well as engage herself. Discordia is going to only make this Kakullen even stronger. That additional power from the passive likely going to find its way into the soul lane. Look, man, this JustF6 draft, they're looking to scrap.
It's one of those drafts that it tells you everything it's going to do. You know exactly how they're going to come at you. You know who's going to be doing the damage. You know how difficult it's going to be. And yet at the same time, there's not much you can do about it. Camazotz, as their final pick in there, been something that has been kind of deadly so far today. This Achilles, does it change enough for you? Also, where's he going? I'm looking at this draft and I'm realizing that there's a no hunter. Just now clicking Bologna? Osiris? Somebody, like, they're both attack speed based. You send them over there? Who's doing what?
SCC on the line, don't want to fumble. Let's go ahead and run triple warrior, I guess. Quadruple frontline. In a set that has been dictated by frontline diff, Clay Soldiers decided we'll just draft more of it. We're just going to have more frontline than the other team. This is an awkward composition now. Had they just locked in a normal hunter, I think that this draft is blanket statement good, but now you got to think, is it going to be Jing Shen and Achilles in the long lane? Is it going to be Jing Shen Osiris? It's hard to say, but either way, they are going to be lacking for consistent damage.
Well, we're going to have to see if it works for them. Everything on the line. Your path back to the SCC if you're Clay Soldiers, and they end up with 3 different warriors. Let's see if it's going to be them or JustF6 making it back into the Challenger circuit.
3 warriors, no hunter. This is the meta now. You heard it here first. Clay Soldiers, they're bringing something interesting to the table. Their SCC lives on the line, and it is a Tori on the Bologna. Out of the duo lane, Shoxy Foxy will be there trying to support that. And Taco, what do you expect here? I mean, look, you're going against an Athena on her, and you, I guess Bologna has like a little range depending on the stance you're in, right? I mean, I'm trying to find something here. Is there nothing? You're shaking your head. You're not excited about it?
Go big or go home, Tyson. I think that's the mindset I'm going to approach this one on for Clay Soldiers, but as far as the viability in this Warrior ADC substitute, the main drawback, I think, is simply going to be the fact that there is going to be a serious lack of range damage available for the Clay Soldiers, and whether or not that impact is felt during the laning phase really just steeply depends on whether or not Atori and Shoxy Foxy are actually able to create some immediate pressure in this lane.
Well, Stimic's quite low here at the hands of Azriel over there in the solo lane. Atori playing with fire here. Because you have to step up to farm, but you're stepping up into an Athena, and then Toddy can just chill in the back and deal some serious damage to you. So I'm curious. I mean, the goal here has got to just be to survive, right? I mean, but this is going to be happening on cooldown. It's the leap in. And yeah, as if you're surprised, Atori taunted, leapt on, and killed by an Athena on her. I don't want to lane against an Athena on her. If it's a normal support and hunter matchup, they're going to be annoying even if you have range. Atori was behind their minion wave underneath their tower, and they still died.
I think my main issue with this is that the sole purpose of taking a warrior, just in general, whether it's Bologna, Osiris, it doesn't really matter what warrior you take into this duo lane. The fact at the end of the day, Dolson, is that there was already an Athena selected. Any hopes of a 1v1, those went out the window the moment that JustF6 locked in Athena. However, Saragazek could be in some trouble here. Worst Turtle still looking to collapse and maybe find some final kills. Instead, it'll be Far Creek, but another miss 2 out of Worst Turtle is going to mean that Far Creek stays alive. Maybe even returns fire.
Worst Turtle gets portaled on through. That's kind of an awkward little dance there. For some reason, I don't know, I had to turn around in my head. I didn't know what direction Sarago was trying to go there, and Worst Turtle was just kind of staring at the Achilles, didn't do any damage there on the back end of it, probably keeping his eyes open for a portal. I guess, I don't know, because I'm still kind of shaken by the way that this duo lane has...
Don't make us look at it, Doug. Go
but I'm
somewhere
wondering,
else.
so look, you're in a situation like this. Toddy and Rotwin are going to be farming at the Clay Soldiers tower line like the entire lane, right? Does that's got to open you up to some jungle pressure maybe from Saraga or rotation on in? I mean, you're so far away from your own tower, but maybe when stuff like this is happening and you're just doing all of the damage, much harder to find some of that value. Purple buff taken away, and now in range to get some damage onto Toddy. We've seen some life now out of the Clay Soldiers duo lane.
But the damage has already been done. Rotwin and Toddy successfully strip away that purple buff. That timer now belongs to JustF6. Shoxy trying to see if he can intervene with the confirmation of JustF6's purple buff, but Honor with that impale should never really be able to unconfirm that purple buff. And sure enough, JustF6, they get the buff. They get both buffs even. And Dolson, to kind of be a little bit more direct as far as what you're talking about in terms of if they're farming at the tower line, surely somebody ganks them.
Yeah,
but
right?
The problem is Soto's, Worst Turtle, they're doing a great job as well at controlling a lot of that mid-game pressure, which kind of prevents Firecrick from having that opportunity to look for a big through space and time to alleviate some of this duo side pressure.
All right, and JustF6 have been able to stay alive so far in this lane. Do you one better? They've gotten the only kill in this game onto Atori. Luckily for Atori, things have slowed down from the onset of the game, but now Toddy's going to go back, get some of the items purchased up. Ninja Tabi to start on. Rotwin's going to get to rotate on throughout the map here as well. Great Apple, great Strife connecting. Now Bat Out of Hell to close the gap, and Worst Turtle is there to deal the last bit of damage. A portal will be there onto the Kamazots, but Worst Turtle able to dodge out the last bit of damage, and the blink away secures his escape.
Just to make sure that Shoxy can't get pursuit, but Worst Turtle still on the runaround as Itori Will Eagles Rowley finds his first kill of the game. A heads-up play from this Bologna. If he can't make anything happen in the duo lane, well, might as well try your luck elsewhere, and that rotation actually going to be the ultimate punishing factor here for Worst Turtle, but Athena still choosing to utilize that rally
to
up
close
for the
the
team.
gap. Well, Shoxy will jump on away there, but it's going to be a purple buff invade looked at and secured here by the JustF6 duo lane. So Atori rotates out, grabs a kill, loses a purple buff in return. I'm curious, though, how this starts to then look in team fights, because we've talked plenty about Atori on the Warrior in the lane and the lack of range and how that might look. How we even saw First Blood. We've seen plenty of this. As a result, half HP already on the Bologna. Does the lack of ranged physical damage then play a role in the team fights, Taco?
Yes, because then they have no way to consistently pull a Gold Fury without having to absorb a decent chunk of damage. Same can be said for the Pyromancer, same can be said for the Fire Giant. The other thing, too, is that your positioning is super telegraphed when you're running all of this melee, and when your greatest range is a Giannis Unstable Vortex or the through space and time, that's not exactly what you're looking for either. But Saragazek trying to do what he can to make up the difference here, and JustF6 will finally have a taste of their own medicine as their purple buff is successfully invaded. Itori now has a purple buff to his name, but I'm keeping an eye on Itori here because I'm really hoping he's not building a Frostbound Dolson, but I really think he's building a Frostbound Dolson.
What else would, I mean, what? Like Sledge? I don't know. I mean, it's got to be, right? I mean, it's got to be, all right. We'll hold off. I mean, it's hard to predict exactly the way some of these builds go, but we'll see. We'll see what direction Atori goes. I'll give you the opportunity, though. Why would you hate it if it were a Frostbound?
He's just never going to get close to Honor to begin with. Between Impale and the Shifting Sands, Itori's never going to get a chance to actually proc that Frostbound passive. And even if he does, there's just so much collapse from JustF6. They're just going to blow him up for it anyway. And sure, maybe Frostbound does have a little bit of a health benefit for it, but it's just not really the direction that you would want your ADC Bologna to go.
Fair. As now Toddy and Rotwin look to close that gap. Look, as unbiased as I can be, I want to see this Bologna do something because I just think it's cool. Although by the time we get out of this lane, it's just going to be, a Bologna on the map in these team fights, and it won't be Hunter Bologna so much anymore. That's a good Whirlwind of Rage and Steel onto Rotwin. The Eagles rally is there. A nice stun against the wall, but it's not enough. And Rotwin just a bit overextended. You got to respect the ability of this Xing Qin to throw you back into the range of that tower. And hey, a couple of kills on your Bologna in the duo lane.
Something to be said about taunt dash-ins, Athena's, but we're going to leave that to the wayside because I'm sure Rotwin already regretting his decision-making there. That close to the T1 tower made it all too easy to be scooped up by Shoxy's Whirlwind. And more importantly, Dolson, that does add a little bit of a bandage to the bleeding that was taking place in that duo lane. Just one more time, if Tori is able to stay on par with Toddy, you know, maybe it won't be the worst thing in the world, but
Right.
I'm just not sold on Bologna ADC in a competitive environment.
Remains to be seen if it's going to find win value here. Has been there to capitalize on great moments, not necessarily Tori's built himself. Couple mid-lane ultimates exchanged here. Ferricrick, Sotos both take a little bit of damage. Serga as well. Kills even, but gold trickling towards JustF6 a little bit further. It's like situations like this where you imagine Tori's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. The supports have left. There's no Xing Chen to send a free kill underneath your tower. Tori's just got to be a little bit more careful when left alone in the lane with the on her, especially with how comfortable Toddy has looked here. Greater Scorpion taken down just now by JustF6. So some enhanced buffs certainly waiting around the corner here. Been left alone over in the soul lane just a little bit here. Triple zeros across the board for both the Kulkullen and the Osiris. There was some early damage from Azriel onto Listimics, but that's now been turned around. Tainted Steel starter item here for the Kulkullen. And if Kulkullen continues the tear that we've seen throughout this set, JustF6 are going to be better off for it. I know we were just buying some time there, but we have bought enough time for Frostbound to roll through here for a Tori.
Now we're in business, baby. Bologna ADC, you got the works. We got the Ninja Tabi, we got the Death Soul, we got the Frostbound, and there's going to be a lot of pain inflicted, Dolson. I'm just not certain that pain will be felt for the likes of JustF6.
How do you? I guess I'm just at. I guess we saw it out of the jungle last game, right? I mean, it was attack speed. You get in range and you just wail away. I guess the play style is the same. You just start the game on the left-hand side of the map, right? Instead of in the jungle. I don't know what it looks like, to be honest. I don't know. I've only ever played Bologna attack speed in arena. I've never even considered attempting it in any sort of conquest matchup. But I guess we'll find out. We'll see what Tori chooses to play this like here in a very pivotal game 3.
Long story short, objective damage is non-existent right now for the Clay Soldiers, and that is the primary storyline that I want to see JustF6 punish Clay Soldiers for, because realistically speaking, what Worst Turtle and Rotwin are doing right now is exactly what the team needs to be doing, although Rotwin should be careful. Saragazek going to show face, and Worst Turtle actually might have found himself in a spot of trouble. Through space and time is going to come through, but Worst Turtle won't get clipped by it and has managed to confidently pull himself out of that execute threshold, but JustF6 a little bit too slow. Should have probably waited for Sotos to actually have an opportunity to rotate in, but it's not like Clay Soldiers can take the objective either.
Right, it felt like you mentioned non-existent objective damage. Kind of feels like both sides with the way that fight went there. Strife won't connect from Sotos, but Ferricrick takes decent little bit of damage there. Worst Turtle's still sticking around. You can sustain, but you got to be careful. Shoxy Foxy's got that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel ready to go. Worst Turtle does have Bat Out of Hell, so that will be there as well. We've taken a bit of a lull here. It was a lot of flash in the pan there in the first couple minutes of the game. We've now gone, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes without a kill coming across. In that time, though, it's been a pretty steady maintenance of about a 1,000 gold lead here for JustF6. Nothing. I mean, it's rare you see that from the, first 1 minute mark. We've had a dead even 1,000 gold game here. Both teams happy with maintaining the pace.
This is really just going to boil down to which side is able to get the more favorable end on those direct objective pools, and again, still leaning very heavily in JustF6's favor because they have the on her. They have been a little bit hesitant, I think, just ultimately trying to give respect where it's due, because despite the fact that ADC Bologna with Frostbound and Ninja Tabi, not necessarily the most ideal for any team composition, at the same time, she's still a warrior. She still has decent scaling for these early to mid-game fights. So JustF6, I think, are just biding their time, and ultimately that'll just work out even more so in their favor, because the late game is definitely something that they should have a very easy time controlling with their composition in comparison to Clay Soldiers.
Spiked Shield and Blink picked up now for Tori, so we'll see how the Bologna is able to capitalize on a couple of those new item pickups here. Shoxy Foxy taken down to half HP. Gold Fury maybe being looked at here by JustF6. It's a 4-member grouping over towards the mid lane. Ferricrick uses the through space and time as CC immunity there. So now that ultimate is down. Strife connecting on the back end, but Farrakrick will be able to use the portals to stay alive. A bit hesitant from both teams, not wanting to re-engage, though that big ultimate down in the mid lane could be an opening for JustF6.
And Worst Turtle, actually on more than one occasion, has been having some difficulties connecting his damage into CC targets. That's definitely something that probably want to see him clean up a little bit better if he wants to actually try and confirm some of those big DPS numbers like we just saw on the JustF6. But JustF6 being poked out to 40% HP, this makes the opportunity possible because no through space in time for Farrakrick to try and get JustF6 back in any sooner. Worst Turtle also pulling pressure with the red buff, and no one even looking at JustF6 on this Gold Fury.
Desert Fury used on the Gold Fury, and JustF6 will finally grab the objective. Clay Soldiers pushing out of their side of the jungle, looking for some stragglers. Lord of the Afterlife gets used here by Azriel, and it's Worst Turtle that is slow. That's the prime target there, but unable to get back into range and get the kill there. So now JustF6 have finally kind of broken that 1,000 gold threshold that we have. Could bring it back, though, a little bit to Clay Soldiers. They're looking towards Toddy here underneath the Tier 1 tower, but Defender of Olympus comes on in as Azriel looking for the stun on Toddy. He uses the beads, but the stun connects from Saraga. Nonetheless, Aegis gets used on the back end of things. Big up down there, and JustF6 has got the final killing blow on Toddy.
But all that investment for a lone pick onto Toddy doesn't really seem too beneficial just yet for Clay Soldiers. Have to keep in mind that Gold Fury already went down. If they're able to transition this now into mid lane pressure, it could be another story here, Dulcin, but JustF6, a nice pull of Worst Turtle's Purification Beads off that Whirlwind ultimate for the Shink 10. Saragazek still lurking behind as well. But it's the amount of investment and how long it actually took 4 different members to kill one single on her underneath his own tower. That's the primary drawback and concern. The damage mitigation as well from the Athena ultimate that Rotwin was able to provide. Certainly not doing Clay Soldiers any favor, but the fact is, when you invest that much for so little on the return, you just have to wonder what's going to happen as Toddy now has the Aussie online. If he had Aussie in that engagement, he likely doesn't die, and we potentially see 3 to 4 members of Clay Soldiers go down.
Yeah, small moment that maybe makes a big difference there if Toddy had that item ready to go. Did have to use the active, so at least a bit of a silver lining there where you get the kill, you get the Tier 1 tower and the actives off Toddy if Clay Soldiers are able to capitalize on those actives being down in the next minute and a half or so. Still took a minute to get that Gold Fury down for JustF6. There was enough pressure bought by the front line that Clay Soldiers weren't able to poke their heads around the corner. And so, you imagine Pyromancer is going to take a little while, especially after JustF6 and what happened before. It was Rotwin and Worst Turtle trying to do the Pyro alone. And that's when Saraga rotated in and nearly grabbed a couple of kills. But JustF6 able to escape. Somehow this Tier 1 tower on the left hasn't gone down despite all of this wave pressure pushing against that tower throughout a big portion of this game. Could be a rotation in behind here, though, from Worst Turtle. Portal gets used by Farrakrick. The Camazotz does have Bat Out of Hell, but gets spotted out by Saragazek, who's done massive damage numbers on the end of it, and Bat Out of Hell will get used defensively. 3 swoops and out. And no pick just yet as through space and time goes by.
And the rest of Clay Soldiers start to trickle in. Red buff fully exposed here for JustF6, and Clay Soldiers, they'll waste no time in collapsing onto JustF6's jungle. It's the very least consolation prize that you could hope for in this circumstance, but more importantly, catching Worst Turtle in the first place. Didn't seem as though he was even aware that Saragazek was right behind him.
Right, it's been a passive kind of lead built up here for JustF6 as well. 1 kill. 2 assists, the same that Rotwin's been able to provide, but 2 levels as well. So, Horrific Emblem picked up on the back end of the Blink. And so for the next couple of minutes at least, until Rotwin's able to go back to base, there is an active advantage in a fight if the Clay Soldiers are able to start one up. Pyromancer gets started here, but slow damage rolling through onto it. Gets reset as Clay Soldiers have shown up here on the right-hand side. And I think in a surprising turn of events, with how the early game went, it's a Tori that's pulled a 2-level lead over Toddy here. Toddy got killed, had to go back to base, so there was some free farm time up on the map for a Tori. But this Bologna now starting to transition away from duo lane Bologna into let's see what kind of an impact you can have on the rest of the map.
And Tori feeling a little bit more like a frontlining asset than an actual damage dealer. Seems as though Farrakrick is going to be the main leader as far as DPS is concerned. Maybe a little bit of presence as well from Saragazek, but Toddy just trying to be mindful of that through space and time rotational capability. as he will force Satori a little bit further back down lane, and Worst Turtle also looking to try and make an approach, but solid vision so far from Clay Soldiers, and I think Clay Soldiers have also done a great job at just playing from underneath their tower lines whenever they don't have a clear way to try and initiate onto JustF6.
You know, it's so interesting. It's like coming out of picks and bans, we've talked ad nauseum about the Bologna and the Hunter Bologna, but it seems like the chaos and the curiosity kind of stopped at picks and bans, where early on, you know, we saw Rotwin and Toddy combine for first blood. We figured it'd be a long, difficult laning phase for Atori. It certainly wasn't easy. But we've got 5 kills on the board 19 minutes in. We're at least double that, it feels like, in games 1 and 2. So these teams not trying to roll the dice outside of picks and bans. Maybe we've seen a lot of this, an engage immediately followed by a disengage. And maybe no surprise in that, Taco, with so much on the line here for both of these teams, a berth to the SCC, to whoever wins this individual game. You got to play it safe a little bit, at least once you get into game.
And that's the downside here for Faracrit, because losing his purification beats means that if he even thinks for a moment that he's about to get aggressed on, he's just going to have to fire off that through space and time, and he might not necessarily find an ideal way to utilize it, given that it would largely, not necessarily come out from panic, but just the only means of crowd control cleansing he would have for himself is Oni Fury. This is the benefit of having a ranged ADC with lifesteal. Toddy just going to do his part and trying to take down this Oni Fury. Oni brought down to half. A little bit of zone out taking place here from Listimics as he tries to find an opportunity here for his team, but it seems as though Clay Soldiers, they're all in. They're all about just letting JustF6 try to all in here.
We'll see what the Clay Soldiers do in response. Shoxy Foxy has Blink, has Horrific Emblem, has Ultimate as well. Blink gets used. Horrific Emblem still standing around the other end. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel spins around. A couple have been caught through and onto it, but through space and time goes elsewhere in this fight as Sotos uses Aegis to stay alive, but there's chaos being sprinkled along the back line as the Osiris continues his tear. Shoxy Foxy somehow stays alive here. The final swoop of Bat Out of Hell will close the gap, but not much more. Blink has to get used there, and Worst Turtle grabs the opening kill of this fight. Now it's a Desert Fury flying on in, and Rotwin helps set up the second kill of the fight onto Saraga.
Purification beads burnt out as well in the process there for Itori, and now JustF6 with very clear control surrounding this Oni Fury. They're going to take their time to reap the benefits of that team fight, and Worst Turtle also chooses to make quick work of Saragazek's jungle. And with this Oni Fury going down, Dolson, that does create a small opportunity for JustF6 to follow through with a potential Pyromancer pool or even just the Fire Giant outright, but that fight did not even look close.
No, it was not particularly close at all. Worst Turtle more effective on the back line when Azriel was able to do. Sotos looking like a pick here unless the side steps are enough. The ultimate's going to get used here from Atori and from Sotos as well, but big ultimate now spent, though will delay things out. JustF6 starting to pull that gold onto their side now without a mid laner for the next 40 or so seconds. That's going to give the Clay Soldiers maybe an advantage around the Pyro. It would be a tough call, you think, around the FG, so maybe Pyro is the right call.
Pyromancer, sure, that could be looked at by Clay Soldiers, but based off the speed that this Pyromancer is going down, Fire Giant is going to pose a whole new series of issues here for Clay Soldiers. I don't think that there's any world where they can pool that objective with only Sotos having been taken out. They'll need at least 2, if not 3 or more picks before actually having an opportunity to look towards that big objective of the FG itself. However, Sotos dying when he did, his relic's still on cooldown for another minute or so. There is a small chance for a power play to take place here for Clay Soldiers if Faracrit can find a nice through space and time initiation for the team.
Are you okay, so we're very unhappy with initially the Frostbound Hammer. We weren't thrilled, maybe, is the way to word it. Since then, it's been Void Shield, Talisman of Energy, and then something else defensive on the back end of the build here for Atori. So it looked a little offensive to start off, and then, you know, a little bit more solo, tanky, hybrid-centric down the stretch. Does the build kind of make a little more sense now that we've gotten to see it form a little bit more here from Atori?
I'll put it this way, Dolson. I would not want to have to rely on this build for my standing of whether or not I make it into the SCC.
All right. Fair enough. I can accept that answer, I think. Atori A 3-1-1, but a lot of those came out of the laning phase with the assist of the rest of the team. Through space and time, does not connect on anyone. Portal just in time. Serga on the back end of it, though. Big knock-up from the Cullen, and it's Worst Turtle swooping through to get the kill onto Achilles. Now Farrakrick gets gunned down by Toddy here, and the 3 surviving members of Clay Soldiers will survive under the Tier 2, and it's an immediate call back to the FG.
No reason to continue forcing that engagement. JustF6 have already collected their prize. They take out Farrakrick and Sergazek. That's all the damage off the board here for Clay Soldiers. No one left to contest this Fire Giant, and now Clay Soldiers find themselves on the back foot here, Dulcin, as they might potentially see themselves knocked out. And again, I'm not going to exclusively place the blame on Ittori here by any means, because it's a team decision at the end of the day. You know your boys trying to lock in Bologna ADC, and if the team is willing to come to a conclusion that, like, yeah, this is our best shot in to the SCC again, well, that's something for them to, you know, maybe pull up to the drawing board on for next time.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, Ittori's played it, I guess, as well as you could. 3-1-1. I mean, that's simplifying it. Don't get me wrong. You're shrinking it down to a KDA, which is not entirely fair. We're a golden hand here, so
for a moment.
no, I imagine it's low, but I think I've qualified, player damage bottom of the charts there for Ittori. So that's technically your hunter. That's a little bit low, but I've qualified it. You've gotten these 3 kills, but that happened so long ago, and it's again not Ittori specifically the player. It's the difference that not having that range damage makes on your team. We're more harshing on that and less the performance of the player as an individual. When player damage is looking the way it is, where everyone except for the support on the enemy team is above every single player on your team, or when Xing Chen has the highest damage on your team 25 minutes in, I think you got to look across the board. It's just not been a well-executed game plan here for the Clay Soldiers.
But the most shocking part about Ittori taking this Bologna ADC, Dulcin, is he was running dual lane when he was actually matching Toddy on the physical hunter ADC presence. And he didn't even necessarily have to be a physical hunter. He could have maybe even looked for, magical ADC presence if he wanted to, but he had a solid performance on the Honor, even if they lost in game 1. He had a great performance on the Uller, and Uller, I think, arguably a much harder hunter to execute with than some others, and I just find it incredibly odd that in a Game 3 scenario, he chooses to default himself into a handicapped position, because at this level of play, even if it's not the Smite Pro League itself, these are all still competent players that know how to deal with basic casualties.
Sure, it's a weird call, to be sure, and Ittori now is going to try to make it work underneath the Phoenix here, but look at the dive roaring through from the Clay Soldiers here. Lord of the Afterlife and some tethers in there for Asriel, who's deep in the backline here. Toddy is going to try to escape, but Ittori back in the kill feed now is JustF6 have lost their first team member. It's a taunt back in, though, as the second wave of fighting now occurring, and it's Sotos being the driving, damaging force as Bat Out of Hell swoops on through. The dive is in, Saraga strifed down, and Sotos finds another big kill here in this Phoenix Siege.
Ittori trying to do what he can to buy himself some time, but Worst Turtle will pick up Ittori on the back end, as now Sotos under duress will expend his Aegis in the process, and Worst Turtle looking to harass Farrakrick. Meanwhile, the Phoenix will ultimately fall thanks to the remaining members of JustF6. They lose Toddy, but it doesn't really impact their actual siege potential. So much invested, pretty much everything invested from Clay Soldiers in that instance just to kill one member, and this is again, pulling back to that initial storyline that we talked about when we saw Toddy die last, and that was underneath his T1 tower. Every single member from Clay Soldiers had to be involved just to find that one pick, and that's the difference when you think about a range damage dealer in comparison to all of this melee.
Right. And now you look at JustF6 and the point they are in this game, 10,000 gold in the lead. Fire Giant's going to fall off here in the next 15 to 20 seconds or so, which means it'll respawn in the next minute and 15 or 20 seconds or so. And this is normally what you see. The first FG knocks down a lot of the towers, opens up the ability to end the game later on. That's why the left side gets sieged here first. So JustF6 will get their feet back underneath them here, or keep their feet underneath them, because they've been driving this game here. Worst Turtles look great on the Camazotz throughout this set. You go for FG one more time here. If you're the Clay Soldiers, do you think you have to contest, though? I guess is the big question. You haven't shown much face around the objective. I don't know what kind of, I mean, I guess you can steal with through space and time. I guess it's the question of, do you have a better chance defending against a team with full FG, Or do you have a better chance of stealing away the FG and potentially losing a member and then losing the game after that?
Unfortunately, I think the past couple of engagements have already kind of answered that question, Dulce, because even when they lost Toddy, they still siege, no problem whatsoever. And Far Crick, I like the incentive here, though, from Clay Soldiers. I think this is their best bet. They
gotta go.
they can't let them have Fire Giant for free. This is just... Who's going to bamboozle who first?
You're right. Who's going to sniff this one out? So there is a ward on the left-hand side of the FG pit, but Asriel's been left alone. So JustF6 have shown their hand, but maybe Clay Soldiers have as well. JustF6 realize something is happening here and that the Clay Soldiers are not where they think they are. There was a ward just to the left there. You can see by the jungle entrance from the mid lane. So I'm not sure what the Clay Soldiers have given away here, what JustF6 do or don't know is happening.
No.
Saraga actually looks like was standing on a ward that I didn't see on the minimap. So this is known. The Clay Soldiers finally engage on the fight, but it doesn't matter. Sotos gets taken down by Atori. The big roundabout play nets 1 kill at the beginning of things here. Saraga getting melted away, though. Toddy uses the Aegis. Rotwin will channel the ultimate here as well, and it looks like the blunder is headed the other way. Clay Soldiers, they rotate around, but they lose 2 members. Could be worse here. Is Rotwin doing his best to escape?
There's just no one to collapse as soon as JustF6 look for the disengage. Shoxy will fall to the bleed damage out of Worst Turtle on those Vampiric Bats, and sure enough, Clay Soldiers might just find themselves on the losing end of this set here, Dolson, as the rest of JustF6 chooses to march it right on down the mid lane. They've got a wave approaching soon enough, but with only Asriel and Atori left to play defense, not sure that an Osiris and Bologna can get the job done.
Look, Asriel's got to do it. You got to walk right at Toddy and try to make something happen. Toddy does not have either of his actives here. The Phoenix finally gets worked through. JustF6 choose to call it a day, it looks like, on this one. There's a Phoenix standing on the right-hand side. 10 seconds on Saraga, 15 on Shoxy, 10 on Faircrick as I say it, so the game will live on.
No point in rushing it for JustF6. We have seen now several different occasions where Clay Soldiers have come out on top with a pick first, and then nothing else goes right for them after that, and it's just, again, they have to expend so much of their team fight is dependent on all of their abilities being channeled together at once, but when you're using all of those abilities on one person at a time, there's nothing left for you in reserve. And JustF6, they've got Camazotz, they've got Honor. It doesn't matter if they're missing one carry, they'll just look for it all.
Enhanced Fire Giant, taken low, taken down. It's the Clay Soldiers who steal this one away, and now they gotta win the fight or escape. On the back end of things, JustF6 do not have the enhanced FG, but they might have a chance to win the game. Desert Fury rips on through one. Worst Turtle will find the second here in this fight as Toddy remains alive. It's Shoxy Foxy with no HP trying to disengage. Saraga doing the same over on the right-hand side, but the chase is in. Atori left alone in the base. Clay Soldiers have stolen away the enhanced FG, but what's the cost?
And Worst Turtle will help Sotos. Finding that root in play, Strife going to be enough to take out Saragazek. In the meantime, Atori did what he could to try and defend that left side Phoenix. Left side Phoenix, Fire Waves were pushed out, but mid Phoenix having already been sieged. EFG or not, it's 5 members strong from JustF6 and a lone Bologna Shinkten to try and make up the difference, and it's just not going to be enough.
JustF6 walking on into the Titan here. Atori and Shoxy Foxy trying to separate out the damage. But no chance, not today. JustF6, they walk it in, and they find their way back to the SCC.
A little bit interesting on on that last one. Yeah, nobody notices the step up there either. You know.
No, it was you were sitting. There's a stool back here, and you were standing up. Right, that was a simple stand up.
We're almost the same height.
Onto your feet, not onto anything else in particular. Look, we set the stage, I think, very early on here. But Bologna and the duo lane, interesting, and I think it probably by the end there was less the duo lane, how that lane went, and more the fact that you just don't have a ranged physical hunter, right?
There just wasn't really much of a team fight for Clay Soldiers to really work with there, and even after they steal EFG, there's nothing left. They just had to use so much of everything all at once that when you have nothing left in the tank for after the fact, that's where the problem arose. And I don't think it was exclusively the Bologna ADC.
Of course not.
I just don't think that Clay Soldiers did themselves any favor with that duo lane selection.
Right, you made it harder on yourself instead of easier. It kind of feels like coming out of picks and bans there. Congrats to JustF6. You are back in the SCC after an exciting 3-game set. Taco and I will take a break, and then the desk will break it down after this.
look at it. Why do you always gotta ask me to stay? Why you always gotta go? Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road. Say, why you always gotta go? Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road. See, I've been lost in my thoughts, and my thoughts they too scared to usher off. Sorry, Mom, I just thought you were my world. Now you're not. And I'm just sitting, smoking, sloping in a daze, cause my days ain't been the same since I drove here away. I remember the way you wrote letters in blue ink. You and me was in love. Think about what your crew think. I know your moms probably think I'm a bastard. Your pops probably wanna beat my to death and take a in my casket. But I got sick of fighting, bickering, fussing over nothing, cussing. Instead of watching the death of discussions that we once had, days that we once spent in the backseat of our cars, reading poets at sunset. It's funny how love can fall out the foreground, get pushed into the back of your mind. We used to twist a spliff and laugh and relax. Now you crying, and I'm trying to find the reasons. So I ask, does forever ever happen, or is it always fade to black? I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road. I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road.
I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Maybe put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on board like chemo. Ain't give a F to you like John Cena. Putting blood on the brand new Beamer. Tryna earn 8 stripes like Adidas. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a Keto. And expose to a cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reef. Dímelo porque o no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood. I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy.
Well, Clay Soldiers hung it all out there, Mifflin, for specifically 3 warriors to work. One of them did work. The other 2 didn't quite match up to that one. JustF6 are able to find themselves a victory right here and are able to move themselves right back into the SCC, where hopefully I expect they're thinking they're going to have a much better win-loss this time around. And honestly, based on what we've seen, again, improvements from what we saw week 1 out of this team to what we're even seeing this weekend, I think is going to be really interesting to see them go forward and continue to grow, especially because that one more or less kind of fell into their lap. Some bumps in the road along the way dealt by Bologna, but that was about it.
Look, I think you worded that pretty well, right? The win kind of falls into their lap a little bit there. It's not often that you get to look at a draft and say, yeah, that's why they lost. Full stop, wholesale, just maybe Hunters are pretty good in Smite. Having range damage is pretty good, but instead Bologna was locked in, and JustF6 makes short work of this aggressive frontline-oriented draft.
So you're telling me, like, I can stand, like, over there, but also damage you.
From
and,
further away.
And you couldn't hit me back. That seems pretty good. And most of the time, of course, it's funny to mention that because, admittedly, and look, no offense to Toddy, but Toddy, who cares? It's all on Worst Turtle, right? I mean, like you get a lot of cool play, I think, coming from the on her. The duo lane is interesting. The Athena, a couple of early drops, which was a little surprising over there. The Bologna being able to respond to that, but as the game goes on, you've got this just monstrous Camazotz, very similar to what we saw in the last couple of games, where it's just absolutely taking off, and they didn't have a way to handle it.
Yeah, in Game 1, we'd kind of brought up the point that Worst Turtle had it pretty made out for him. He knew exactly where he wanted to go. He had a very simple target for the dive. Well, up against this Clay Soldiers draft, well, it's pretty simple for Worst Turtle again. Who's he going to want to dive onto? Probably the only non-frontliner, right? And that's exactly what he did the entirety of the time. When your entire team, Clay Soldiers that is built around diving, the one guy who can't dive is going to be the recipient of the enemy.
And out-damaged only by Sotos in this game is mid laner in that Discordia. You can see him. A couple of offline games that come through. Clay Soldiers knocked out, eliminated from what we saw today. Team Joystick going to be the new one joining us in the EU SCC starting there in Phase 2. JustF6, as we had mentioned, jumping right back into it. Kind of surprising of everything. I mean, you look at the standings, Clay Soldiers getting eliminated is kind of a big deal. JustF6 fighting kind of against the odds there. Also, notably, did lose to Joystick, so this was like the do-or-die moment for them.
Yeah, now the EU SEC having some major shakeups here. I'm excited, man. Every single year, every single level of play, be it SCC, SPL, SOC, feels like it's just getting better and better. The Smite scene at large has really started to evolve throughout the years. And look, man, it's never been harder than right now, this very second. I don't know what time it is, 3:12 Eastern, to get into competitive Smite. That's how steep the competition is.
Well, you think the shakeups in Europe are going to be something. I'm excited for North America because this is going to be something different. You can see offline games, Average Joes have beaten Welcome Back Joe, and the Fishies in a 2-1 win have beat the Juarez Jaguars. But today we're going to get to see the Fishies take on Welcome Back Joe as well as Average Joes take on the Juarez Jaguars. I'm really glad we missed the Joe-Joe matchup because that would have messed me up. And this is where things get interesting. Again, Fishies, I didn't look up their exact record off the top of my head. That's for someone else's desk later on
You're the
today.
stat guy.
That's going to be able to come through. Yeah, but you know what? I have a laptop in front of me that could show it to me, but I don't have that immediately. But Fishies, Average Joes didn't have the most successful thing. I'm just going to throw out some names for him. Dishonored, Panda Turtle, they're going to be coming there on Welcome Back Joes, as well as, well, I'm going to read the whole team. Mando, Warrior, Mollusk, Sops, Diesel, Sybil. That's all of the Juarez Jaguars. I am very excited to see what North America has in store for us. I'm sure you are as well. But right now, we're going to rest on our laurels. Congratulate JustF6. We'll be back with North America right after this.